Are we ready? All right. I would like to call this meeting to order, the regular Town Commission meeting on March 23rd, 2021 at 7 p.m. Let's please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Mayfield,
Here.
Vice Mayor Campo, Commissioner Fender,
Yes, I'm okay.
Commissioner Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Tompeck,
Yes.
All right, thank you, April. Additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda, but before I ask for any changes, I'm going to make two myself. I would like to pull out resolution number 902, which is item 5B, and move it to 8B, as the contract is related to that. The contract we are discussing for 8A is related to that budget amendment. And then pull out resolution number 903, which is 5C, and move it to item 9B, as the grant management contract renewal discussion is related to that budget amendment. Commissioner Campo?
I'd like to change the public comment section and put it as in front of the consent agenda. So flip those two.
Okay.
Any other changes?
Commissioner Fender?
Sorry I'm late, Mayor. I assume we've already talked about the changes to the consent agenda. I'm just hoping to scratch or move into discussion naming rights and Indian River Lagoon water quality.
Okay, you want to take those two out of the consent agenda, and we'll do them right after,
Anytime you want, just
okay,
not
we'll
in
do it
consent.
after the approval
Yep.
of the consent agenda.
Thanks so much.
All right, can I get a motion to approve the removal of those two resolutions, putting public comment ahead of consent agenda, and taking G and H out of consent agenda and moving them to right after we approve that?
So move.
Second.
Call the vote, please.
Commissioner Tompeck,
Yes.
Commissioner Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Fender,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Campo,
Yes.
Mayor Mayfield.
Yes. All right, thank you. So first, we will have public comment on non-agenda items. Just a reminder, 3-minute limit. And that these are non-agenda items, and then the items need to be in by now for non-agenda, and any public comment on agenda items need to be in before that agenda item is spoken on. So we have Paul Jones. You want to come up and state your name and address, please, for the record?
Yes, can I take this down? Is that acceptable?
I'd like this.
Yes, no?
Oh, Commissioner Fender seems to prefer them on, but Commissioner
Okay,
Fender, are
that's
you
fine.
okay with that? If you
I
take-
prefer that just keep them on.
That's fine. My name's Paul Jones. My family and I, we moved to 2 Fieldway Drive. It's actually right across over here on the corner lot. We purchased the home in early January. We have 2 young children. We're a very active family. We love Sewalls Point. We came here for the recreational aspects of it, biking, going to the beach, those sorts of things. So, buying at essentially a real estate market high, we're very concerned about valuation. The first thing we did when we moved in was we spent money to try to block the unsightly property across our street that's dilapidated. We spent money to privatize through professional landscaping the wall that runs along the strip mall. So we've been very conscious of property value. I say this purely from background perspective. Our welcome present to Sewalls Point was a notice that we were violating an ordinance specific to pickup trucks. When I was first informed of this violation, I actually thought I misheard it because I thought it was perhaps reversed, being that the topper on the back of my truck, which conceals a lot of the recreational equipment that my family and I use, would actually be required, not prevented, purely from an aesthetics perspective. So it was a little bit of a surprise to me, and that's what brought me here today. My thought is that, and again, this is an opinion, I know you guys recently passed an ordinance related to pickup trucks last year, I believe. My opinion is that the topper on the back of this truck makes it look more like an SUV and should be welcomed and, I wouldn't say enforced or anything like that, but it should be something that's beneficial. There's no toolboxes on it. It's very much a recreational vehicle, and it's professionally installed. It's the same color as my truck. So, without going into great length and detail on it, it's a fairly simple manner. I would like to park my truck in the driveway, and I would propose that the committee and mayor consider a revision to the ordinance that specifically prevents things that are not desired, because, and again, my opinion being that the pickup truck, the way that it's been modified, should be desired or welcomed, not immediately noticed upon, and require my wife and I to scramble to come here to try to explain ourselves. So I appreciate the time. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, no other public comment, then we will move to the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda A through F?
So move.
Can we call the vote?
Vice Mayor Campo,
Aye.
Commissioner Fender,
Yes.
Mayor Mayfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Kurzman. Yes. Commissioner Tompeck.
Yes.
All right, now we will move to the items pulled by Commissioner Fender. G, the naming rights for the police department lobby. Commissioner Fender?
I'm not leading it. I just wanted to make sure the discussion was had rather than
Oh, okay.
passing through consent. I think we do actually have this topic later in the agenda, right?
Yes,
So
we have the resolution.
I'm fine having the discussion on G
Oh.
during that part of the agenda. It makes sense to me.
We go ahead and do it right now, since, keep it with the consent agenda. Commissioner Tompeck, and then maybe Chief Tina will speak.
Yes, I had some, I don't have a problem with the specifics of the, of Chief Savini. What I need to understand is that the process that we're using here. I went back and looked at Section 2-300, and it seemed to indicate that you needed an assistance petition and a request for minimum community support. I wasn't sure if that was optional, because the way way it's written doesn't seem like it's optional. And I just wanted to make sure we were following the process.
Okay, thank you. Town Manager, do you have any insight on that?
Yes, Madam Mayor, Commissioners, obviously this is a law, so we should refer to our town attorney, but what I will say is the interpretation that we utilized is that when it comes through the public, then yes, that is the formal process we would follow. However, if it comes through the commission can put anything they like onto the agenda. And so this request came from two members on the commission to be able to be discussed and then potentially move forward. And so that's how it ended up on the agenda without having a petition from the public.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I was one of the commissioners that asked that it be put on the agenda. I spoke with Chief Tina about it, and she stood behind it, and it seemed like that Louis' daughter was very interested in doing it, and it seemed like a nice gesture in some hard times, and Chief Tina can speak to his impact on our town. So if I could ask her to come up, please.
Thank you, Commissioners. As you mentioned, this was originally spearheaded by former Chief Savini's daughter in honor of his 90th birthday. And I know that all of you have met Chief Savini. He's been here recently before the Commission because of his ongoing support of law enforcement as a member of the 100 Club, which raises money to support injured or killed law enforcement and fire rescue personnel. Louis really is, and I say that as a term of endearment, but Chief Savini, fondly referred to as Louis, was one of our longest standing employees as well as our second to longest standing chief of police. And he really is the force behind the police department that you have today. I can tell you unequivocally that he is the forefather of our culture, our tradition of service that we provide to the residents of the town of Sewalls Point. I still recall the first thing that I learned working here from that man is that if a resident wants something, you do it right now. And that was always his focus. And I think far too often we recognize people once they're gone. And I think that that would be very unfortunate that someone such as Lou, who's had such a significant impact on this town, who literally is still guiding police officers today, 15, 20 years after he's left. He's still a driving force. I think that it would be our privilege to honor him in our lobby by placing a small sign at no expense of the town and designating that as his lobby, and recognizing the significant impact that he's had on us today, on us in the past. And I think he's well deserving. And I would be honored to help to facilitate that if you supported that effort.
Okay, thank you, Chief Tina. Any questions for her? Okay.
Great job.
Thank you.
Town manager, do we need to vote on agreeing to that or just wait till the resolution? Should we, since it was in the
I was
consent
confused.
agenda?
On this item, it's a memo just to
Okay.
give you background on why and how the process works. But I would still ask you to adopt the memo from the chief and the memo
Okay.
from myself. So you're voting to adopt here.
Okay, all right, thank you. Commissioner Fender?
So I'm in complete support of honoring Chief Savini. I think he's been a great member of town. He was before my tenure, but I'm assuming you guys got some of the calls that I got during the week on naming rights and what the ordinance on naming are. So I think it warrants a conversation. And my personal opinion is that we should honor Chief Savini in a way that lives on forever with a bit of history. I think I heard Chief mention a plaque. I think a plaque is a great thing. I'm not necessarily convinced yet, but I can be. And by the way, I'm not passionate about this at all, but I think I'm passionate about honoring Chief Savini. Naming the lobby after him is I find a little peculiar, especially the way it was worded in the write-up, because it said the police department lobby, and so my question was is that the lobby over there or the lobby here? But I think we should, I think what we're missing in this room a little bit is some of the history of the town, and it's significant, and there are people that do need to be recognized, from the Evan Roods to the Kiplingers to the early mayors of the town, and also Chief Savini and the police chiefs that came along. But I'm not convinced yet that naming the lobby after him is the way to do him justice. I think we should do it right, and it doesn't bother me that it costs a few bucks to create that plaque that actually talks about the great contributory things that Chief Savini did for the town. And I think we should do it while he is around to enjoy it as well, by the way. So, I mean, if the lobby naming is what passes muster and you think is enough, it's fine, but I think it changes a precedent that we have on naming conventions, but also I don't think it does enough to justify what he's contributed to the town, along with some other people as well, who should also have some history that people decades from now will go back and reference and understand and see where we came from. So I'll just leave it at that. I hope this is not being interpreted as going against the concept of honoring Chief Savini. I think we should do it, but there may be a better way to do it.
Okay, thank you. I think it came up at this point because his daughter was the driving force and was, really wanted it and persisted, and so I had conversations with Tina, and his birthday, I believe, is April 4th, and I think she was hoping to time it around his birthday in an effort to not, because we do have a lot of residents that deserve recognition, and so the lobby seemed appropriate, and, yes.
If I could actually mention, the lobby is the only space we have versus the locker room, the restroom, or the lunchroom. It did seem, as far as the space. I would also tell you, I would not find it objectionable if you didn't like the lobby, if you wanted to name the chief's office after Chief Savini. It's just,
Are you talking
quite
about
frankly,
the
we have.
lobby of the police department or the
No, that
lobby
tiny-
of the town
that-
hall?
That little, like, 4 by 6
Oh,
foot
okay, so not
space
the town
outside
hall.
Kathy's window, yeah, it's, I mean, we just don't have that much space in the police department, and the lobby or the chief's office truthfully sounds the most attractive out
When I
of.
hear lobby, I think,
No,
Police.
no, it's the police department has pretty limited space to find a spot that would be appropriate.
okay.
Thank you, Tina. Commissioner Campo?
Yeah, I don't want to beat this thing to death. We've got a long agenda, and I'd like to accept the Chief Tina's memorandum, and then once it comes up on Section 5, I will be happy to move approval of that resolution. But we got a lot of business to take care of.
Okay. Is that a motion? You made a motion? I'll second it. All right. Can you call the vote, please, Town Clerk?
Mayor Mayfield,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Campo,
Yes.
Commissioner Tompeck,
Yes.
Commissioner Fender,
Yes,
Commissioner Kurzman.
All right, excellent. The Indian River Lagoon Water Quality Improvement Grant update. I think that was just to update us on the status and what was happening. Commissioner Fender, did you?
I don't have anything specific. I
Okay.
just didn't understand why it was consent, so. If it's
Um,
just an
I think
update,
To document that we are made aware and approve that we are made aware.
okay.
Madam Mayor, yes.
Yes.
If I may, Madam Mayor and Commission, in the past, what I've been doing is offering some of these memos to you via staff comments, and really, they should be a little bit more formalized. So I took a look at what other larger municipalities, the National League of Cities, suggest for consent agendas, and they suggested formalizing memos this way as well. And it allows us to move through the process of this agenda, give you the information you may want to discuss and pull out, but if not, it helps you to make decisions later on in the meeting, or it may even be a follow-up from a previous discussion, but it memorializes the outcomes.
Thank you, Town Manager. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Call the vote, Town Clerk, please.
Vice Mayor Campo,
Aye.
Commissioner Tompeck,
Yes.
Commissioner Fender,
Yes,
Commissioner Kurzman. Yes. Mayor Mayfield.
Yes. All right. We are moving on to proclamations and presentations. 4. Town Clerk, would you please read the proclamation?
Sure. A proclamation declaring the 2020 census complete and a success in Sewalls Point, Florida. Whereas the United States Decennial Census of Population and Housing was conducted in 2020, and whereas the town of Sewalls Point partnered with the United States Census Bureau and many local organizations in the formation of a complete count committee to assure that residents of our area were counted in the census. Whereas the information collected in the census serves many useful purposes, including apportionment of representation in Congress and other legislative bodies, measurement of the economic well-being of communities and their inhabitants, allotment of certain federal and state tax revenue and other financial aid to our community, and determination of future need for public services and other benefits. And whereas the self-response rate reported for the town of Sewalls Point was 75.1%, far above the national average of 66.2%. Whereas the theme for the 2020 census, Shape Your Future, reflected the seriousness of full participation by all citizens to be counted for the betterment of our community. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Town of Sewalls Point Commission that the 2020 census is complete and deemed a success. Presented this 23rd day of March, 2021.
Thank you, April. And Chief Tina, I believe you were helpful with the census, so we want to thank you. Thank you very much for your work. All right, we are moving on to 5, resolutions. 5A, resolution number 901, naming rights. Would the town attorney please read the title into the record?
Yes, resolution number 901 is a resolution of the Town Commission of the Town of Sewalls Point, Florida, approving the naming of the Town of Sewalls Point Police Department lobby, the Chief Louis J. Savini Police Department lobby, providing for conflict, severability, and effective date and other purposes.
Thank you very much. I know we discussed this, but any discussion amongst the commission?
I move approval.
Call the vote, please.
Vice Mayor Campo,
Aye.
Commissioner Fender,
aye.
Mayor Mayfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Kurzman. Yes. Commissioner Tompeck,
Yes.
All right, moving on to resolution, oh, I removed them. So we are now going to resolution number 904, home rule. Would the town attorney please read the resolution title into the record?
Yes, resolution number 904 is a resolution of the town of Sewalls Point, Florida, urging all members of the Florida legislature to oppose unwarranted or overly broad preemptions of municipal home rule powers, directing a copy of this resolution be transmitted to members of the Florida legislature, the Florida League of Cities, and any other interested parties, and providing for an effective date.
All right, thank you, Glenn. Is there any discussion amongst the commission?
I move approval. 904.
Any second?
I'll second it.
All right, town clerk, will you call the vote, please?
Commissioner Tom Peck,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Campo,
Yes.
Commissioner Fender,
Yes.
Commissioner Kurzman,
Yes.
Mayor Mayfield.
Yes. All right, we are moving right along. There are no ordinance first readings or second readings. So now we are going to move to item 8. Old business A is the contract for comprehensive plan 2020-2021 Bonnie Landry Planner. Town manager, will you please introduce the item, read the memo?
Madam Mayor, Commissioners, the Town of Sewalls Point adopted its comprehensive plan on December 13th, 1989. Last year, the Town of Sewalls Point recognized the need to update the plan to reflect current state requirements and notified the Department of Economic Opportunity on March 26, 2020, that the town would amend its comprehensive plan accordingly. Typically, the document is drafted and transmitted within 1 year of the notice to DEO. However, because of COVID-19 pandemic, it shifted much of the focus in 2020, and the selection of a consultant to update the plan was delayed. In December 2020, the town did select the local planning firm of Bonnie C. Landry and Associates, PA, to provide general planning services to the town, which includes drafting the update to the comprehensive plan. To that end, BCLA has drafted Task Order 21-02 to complete this project. The impact to the budget. At the February Commission workshop, the consultant provided an overview to you of the comprehensive planning process, explaining its purpose, related state requirements, roles, and a recommended timeline. Following the workshop, and by the direction of the Commission to find a solution for us to reduce the task assignments, and by then reducing the fees, the consultant met with the mayor and myself to identify efficiencies to reduce the cost of the project. Strategies included utilizing data from the January 2020 workshops, as well as partnering with the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council and its March strategic planning session for capital projects. This was an overlay opportunity, and so instead of basically getting charged twice, we were able to be efficient on this process. So the cost was reduced from $122,000 down to $77,000 for a savings of $45,000. Separately, we are moving forward, going for a grant for planning in the amount of $40,000, which should help offset that cost as well. So recommendation is staff recommends approval. Bonnie Landry is in the audience, should you have any questions.
Okay, thank you, town manager. Opening it up to discussion. Commissioner Campo.
Yes, I have a number of issues with this. One of them is specific on the proposal. One of it has to do with our contract. And the most important thing to me as a commissioner is that the information that I get from the town manager is complete. And I've been known to not listen, so I have to really focus. My daughter looks at me when she has some homework and she says, "Dad, do I have your full attention?" So she knows how I am, and oftentimes I miss things. But I was very impressed, although we didn't spend any time on it, the proposal from the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, especially as it pertained to project deliverables. And my issue with the revised proposal, which was initially given to us at a cost of $200,000, and now we're given I'm not quite sure what this is, this very colorful timeline, project initiation and data. But I caught the word phase 1, and I'm wondering if this is basically a $200,000 project that's just going to be given to us in 3 steps. I'd like to know about that now, and that's why I'm always very concerned about the information that I get from the town manager and staff, because I don't want to start an open-ended commitment just to find that we have more phases and more costs. So I guess my question are, what are the other phases? What are the other costs? I'd like to know, once this phase is done, how does it dovetail with our building zoning codes and our LDRs? If we're not in compliance, and I know some things have come, a lot of laws have come up in the last 25 years with affordable housing and ADA, things like that. So if we're not in compliance, what's the process and cost for us to be in compliance? The deliverables are not listed. I don't have any deliverables, and I like deliverables. I like to be able to know that we've got a bookmark and we have a place to move forward to. Is our agreement, is this our agreement? Is basically just this task order for comprehensive plan? Is that the entirety of it? So that's another question. I just want to make sure that we see the big picture when we go down the road. We hired an employee not too long ago, and I probably didn't ask the right question, but I thought I knew if we were going to need another vehicle, and we took on extra costs, so I went ahead and approved, but just to find out that there was cost for another vehicle down the road. So I'd rather maybe ask questions more completely so that I know the whole picture moving forward. That's probably it for now. I would like to know the experience of Bonnie Landry. Love Bonnie, love Kevin. I've known him my whole life. I knew her when she worked for Merrill Lynch, Mac Lowry, a long time ago. But since this is something that we haven't done as a commission and we haven't done as a town, I think we need to be a little bit more educated on what's involved. How many of this type of task has been done by Bonnie? What happens if down the road, let's say we get to April or May and things are not on track? What's our ability to circle back and start over again if we need to? That's a good start anyway, but I have serious concerns about this, and in its current format, I would find a lot of difficulty approving it.
Would you like me to call Bonnie up to address your concerns?
Well, the town manager would, it's your call.
Town manager?
I'm happy to speak. What I'm doing is looking up one of the first questions, so.
Commissioner Fender, in the meantime, and then we'll get.
Well, I'll just go a little farther. I concur with Commissioner Campo, and I have immense respect for Ms. Landry and Bonnie. And but I have to say, with the information I have now, I'm having a hard time getting behind this. In this budget cycle, with the projects we have going, $75,000 feels like a lot of money for something that we haven't done in 38 years that we need to do, but I feel like there's a more cost-effective way to do this. And so I can be convinced otherwise, as I said before, but right now, with what I have here, it's going to be hard for me to vote yes for this.
Okay. They did say they're applying for a grant for $40,000.
I heard that. That's awesome.
Hopefully that would come to fruition. I know when I met with Bonnie, she had some more details. I don't know if you're able to, and you probably do not have it necessarily prepared, but all the background on those items. Town manager, can you?
Mayor, I'd like to call your attention to the screen. General Planning Services, RFQ 2020, was opened on November 9th, 2020, and it closed November 24th, 2020. And I'd have to go back to look at the exact date, but I'm going to guess it was January-ish when the RFP itself, selecting the firm, was done by this commission. So that would have been a perfect time to ask these questions about the background. So moving forward, on the screen is the task list for Phase 1. As the previous, I'm trying to look at Bonnie, as the previous presentation, as the previous presentation showed, there would be 2 phases first phase is for fiscal year 2021, and the second phase will be for the next fiscal year, which will also be a reduced cost. It is our goal to reduce the cost as much as possible, and if you like, in the mid-year, and when you take a look at phase 2 when it comes forward, if we're not able to reduce it as much as you would like, you still have the power to renegotiate or say you're not going to accept that task order. Now, Ms. Landry asked me if you needed a presentation today. And my feedback to her was, I don't think they need a presentation because this is not the first time we've discussed it. And I put out to you all that I'd be happy to meet with you if you had any questions. And I spoke to Mr. Campo about this issue, and so I didn't think that there was a need. But we can absolutely plan for one if you prefer to have a full presentation on the task orders themselves.
Okay. Thank you, Town Manager. I remember the February workshop, you brought the full thing that had the 2 phases. This one was 122,000, the other one was 80-something. We said that was too much, so we looked at narrowing it down. So we met, came up with this. I agree with the Town Manager, we can look at the other phases in the future and decide whether it works, but with a possible grant, the fact that this is a requirement from the state, I believe, to have a comprehensive plan. It's been 30 years, and I believe it can help increase our chances at receiving grants. It seems like a priority, and so I support it. Commissioner Fender.
Yeah, first off, I don't need any additional qualifications for Ms. Landry. I think she's excellent at what she does. But I'm just concerned about the dollars. And I like the idea of getting a grant. It seems like we chase tons of capital improvement projects, and the process we follow is get the grant, do the work. I mean, so I think this falls into that category. When we're talking more than $10,000 or $15,000, I think it makes sense to get the grant and do the work, and have Ms. Landry help us get that grant to fund the process, right?
She is.
Yeah, seems great.
Commissioner Tompak?
And I agree with what fellow commissioners were talking about, but geez, we haven't changed this thing since 1989. We need to get off the stick and get moving on it. I'm curious, maybe you can refresh my memory after phase 2 has been completed. What's the process of submitting it to the state, and do they review it and approve it, that kind of thing? I don't recall. I'm sure you told us, but I don't remember.
Do you want me to start answering questions out? Because I made a list.
Okay.
Do you want me to answer his, or do you want me to go down the list?
If you can answer his briefly, and then we'll get Commissioner Campo, and then you can come up and anser everyone's, but if you
Okay.
can. Because
So the second phase is basically the goals, objectives, and policies, and it's based on the data that I get together and analyze, et cetera. And basically, you have 2 readings. You have the first reading, which is, you have the public workshop. It goes to the LPA, it goes to you. Then it goes to the state, and they have very strict criteria to make sure you hit all the marks. And if you don't, they will make you change it, and then you go back and change it. But we haven't had that experience. We've been very successful because we know the law, and we know what we need to include in it. So typically what happens is you get the report, and you have your second reading, and then you send it back to the state, and then there's a 45-day period where someone could contest it, and then it goes through. But it's all prescribed by state law, 162.
So we would probably be submitting it sometime in fiscal year 2022? Middle of the
Yes,
year or something?
yes,
Somewhere
yes.
in that
And I unfortunately, because I didn't have the presentation with me, I believe the second phase is shorter, because the intensive part and the part that you see it's over 500 hours of work product. The intensive part is the required data, and you can't do your goals, objectives, and policies without having the data that the state requires. They'll just send it back. So there are 2 phases. There are some efficiencies that we could look at in phase 2, but going back to phase 1, I believe there are 2 grants that we could apply for. The one is the perils of flood, because the state really wants you to prepare your comp plan for sea level rise and perils of flood. And then the second grant is it's called it's just a grant for planning. And the DEO has me on their email list, and as soon as the legislature concludes, they expect May, we'll have hopefully that funded, and if it is funded, we're on the list, because they realize that this needs to be done. So the 2 grants together would significantly offset your your cost. But again, the reason why it's expensive, it's not been updated. There's over 450 changes to state law, so you're basically rewriting the plan. And that was directly from DEO. That's not me, that was them.
All right, thank you, Bonnie. Commissioner Campo?
You said you had answers to other questions?
Oh, well, I just wrote down your questions.
Okay.
Do you want me to go through them?
Sure.
Okay. So what are the other phases? Michelle answered that. There's phase 2, which is the goals, objectives, and policies, which are directly correlated to your data, which is what you see there. We do have a detail which we provided in the initial presentation to you of what each of those things entail. What is the public involvement? We significantly reduced the cost of public involvement because we reduced the number of meetings that we recommended you have, just because we were trying to look for efficiencies. And one of the biggest efficiencies was the project we're doing with Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council is directly correlated to your capital improvements, and that is one of the elements. So basically, the capital improvements elements data went down from like it was cut in half. So we worked very closely with the manager and the mayor to deliver, to cut down the scope of services. What we couldn't do is cut out, okay, we're not going to do a housing element, or we're not going to do a recreation element. You can't do that. You have to do what the state tells you. It prescribes what is in your comprehensive plan. But what we did was reduce the man hours, but it's still over 500 man hours. And I've done these, which the other question that one of the commissioners had is, what is my experience? I updated Port St. Lucie's plan. They're a very large municipality, and that went through with no problem. I wrote from scratch the comprehensive plan for the village of Indiantown. That went through with no problem. So I've written it from scratch. I've done your updates. So I am extremely qualified for the job and confident that I could deliver it in a way that the state would accept it, and it is efficiency as we could. I think the mayor can attest that we sat here in the chamber. I had my laptop with the spreadsheet that had the hours calculated, and we would reduce certain hours based on where we could get other data, and she could see the cost go down live.
Yep.
But the cost is the cost, but it's down almost 40%. So I think that my firm has done a good job meeting you halfway and trying to deliver the product as efficient as possible, utilizing the collaboration with the state and with Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, and looking at the 2 grants that we would apply for on behalf of the town. And I think Commissioner Fender was asking if there was a more efficient way. I think that that's what we've delivered tonight. And there is no phase 3. I think one of the questions was how many phases. This is just phase 1 and phase 2. And the thought would be in phase 2 that this would be included in your budget planning for fiscal year 22. So you would not require a budget amendment. It would be considered, and then the project would be done. And you would be done for 7 years. These are only updated every 7 years. So when you're done, you rest assured, and hopefully you look towards the future and you plan. In 7 years, you're going to have to do another update.
Okay. Thank you, Bonnie. Commissioner Fender?
I was just going to ask, I think the town of Ocean Breeze Park just turned theirs in recently. Is that true or false? Or did anybody know anything about the
I know the
Ocean?
city of Stewart did theirs. I don't know about Ocean Breeze.
Well, so City of Stewart's big. You referenced Port St. Lucie. Village of Indiantown is interesting to me because they're smaller, but they're in a different animal because they got massive growth and they're starting from standing start. Ocean Breeze Park to me is also doing some significant build out and changes, but they're small like we are. To me, we're fairly built out. I don't know how much changes there's going to be to what we do on this peninsula, but it's certainly worth documenting.
Hopefully plan for sea level rise. I mean, there
Yeah.
are things you've got to plan for.
Absolutely. And I would say Ocean Breeze Park must have been planning for that as well in whatever they turned in recently. So I'm curious what they did, how they did it, how much it cost, and getting some comparative.
Commissioner Campo, and then Town Manager after.
Would you like to go first? to
No,
answer?
You're
a
you're
question?
an elected official. You go first.
Okay. Well, I'm going to make a motion, okay? So I don't like getting involved in a project until I know what the cost is. So my motion is to direct staff to come back with a complete pricing and complete scope of work so that we can look at it in its entirety before we head down this road. That's my motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
May I make a comment?
Yes, you were waiting, and then Commissioner Tompak.
I would need to refer to our town attorney. Glenn, since we went 38 years without a commission actually moving forward on following the directions from the state, because that's what this is a direction from the state that says if you want to actually be a town, a municipality, these are the rules and the reports that must be followed. What will happen? I mean, what's the consequence? Is there a consequence if this is year 39 and year 40 that this commission decides not to move forward?
I don't know, will it take you 1 or 2 years to get back to us? I don't think so. I think we can look at this next month. I'm
We
not
have to
asking
respond, no, we actually have committed that we would get it done to the DEO. The Glenn's group sent a letter from our town that committed to getting it done within the year, which was our timeline that they asked for.
Okay. Glenn, answer that question just about the legality, and then I'll let Commissioner Tompak go.
About this time last year, the town received a letter from the State Department of Economic Opportunity saying that we had to have our, what's called an EAR amendment, evaluation and appraisal report in by a certain time. The commission, the land manager, wasn't a viable time, COVID hit, so we got an extension until, I believe it's this April. Is that correct?
It's April, correct.
So this April, next month, we're supposed to have this EAR amendment in. Now, an EAR amendment is an amendment based on your comprehensive plan, and you've heard the comprehensive plan hasn't been updated since 1989, and I think once Bonnie got involved, she identified 450 changes that the law had made since 1989 that need to be addressed. So, in fact, one of my questions to Bonnie is going to be, what's the status of the EAR requirement if we are going for the comprehensive plan? Is the state going to give us some more time to do the comprehensive plan?
Well, unfortunately, the answer to that is no. We had a similar situation in the city of Port St. Lucie because we were working on that project during COVID. And we thought, okay, of course they're going to give us more time because we've had this terrible national pandemic. And the answer was no. There are no extensions related to COVID-19.
So technically, the town will be in violation next month
Correct.
of the requirement for the EAR amendment. And then the second question was, what's the consequence? I honestly don't know because the state law doesn't say here is the specific consequence, but I think as a real practical matter, again, I'll turn back to the planner and say, what is the practical consequence? I have some ideas, but I'd rather hear from Bonnie if that's okay.
I know exactly what it is because I had a direct conversation with DEO. First of all, when I called them to say, hey, what can you do for us? I wasn't hired until December, and it's physically impossible to get 550 hours of man-hours done in 3 months. And they said, well, unfortunately, there are no extensions. However, if we would rather you do it correctly, then you send us a document that you've rushed through in 3 months, and we have all these objections and comments. They give you an ORP report. The consequence is there will be no comprehensive plan amendments. So if there are any changes to your comprehensive plan, you cannot make them. That you cannot transmit them to the state until your comprehensive plan is in compliance with
And
the
what's
state.
kind of unknown is what impact will that have on us getting future grants? Again, there's nothing that's written that says this will have a negative impact. But
And-
it's a possibility.
Okay, Commissioner Tompak, he's been waiting.
Yeah, just a quick question. Mr. Campo, you're just really looking for a more detailed cost on Phase 2? Is that all you really need here?
I want someone to be able to tell me, this is everything that you get, and this is what the entire process is, not go down a dead end and find out that maybe there's LDRs that need to be updated, maybe there are questions and changes for going back and forth. I thought I was going to have 2 motions tonight, either go back for RFP, because we only got 1 proposal, which is sad. I mean, what have we done to Joe when we only get one proposal? But instead, what I'm saying is, I want to look at the whole picture, and I want to include the deliverables, and I want to know how they integrate with our current codes, because if we need to make changes, I want to know about that cost right now. So I'd like to call the question.
Okay. I do want to say that there was time, this was brought up before, there was phase 2, there was a cost to it. So that was brought to our attention before. And we came back with something for this fiscal year. So I just want to make that clear. This was brought to our attention before. And I think what you're talking about with the zoning, that is not part of the comprehensive plan. You get the comprehensive plan done, which is its own cost, and those amendments come after. So I'm not even sure we could necessarily
additional
ask
cost.
Bonnie that cost, because that's not really her area at the moment. It's just the comprehensive plan. That's my understanding. Is that correct, Bonnie?
The comprehensive plan goes first. And the LDRs, if there's any changes, would need to be in compliance. But I
Yes.
have not gone through the LDRs, so I have no,
Right.
I can't
Okay.
really answer that. But I can tell you that we did give you the cost for phase 2. There will be some efficiencies, because I got an email today that now you can and it'll save money, it'll save paper. You can electronically submit as of this month.
Okay.
It's a new thing.
Okay.
So my cost was based on stacks and stacks of paper.
Signs tell me to get the ball rolling, but I will, Frank Fender, or Commissioner Fender, if you can be quick, and then I'm calling the vote.
Frank, that's fine. I heard you reference the EAR amendment, so I'm interested in learning more about the minimum requirements for that EAR amendment and what that,
Well, again,
not that I'm asking you to answer, but you
Right.
can if you know, but
I think we'll just call the vote. We already had the motion and the second, so Town Clerk, call the vote, please.
Vice Mayor
I'm
Campo?
sorry, could you repeat the motion?
Yes, repeat the motion, please.
The motion is to direct staff to come back to the commission with a complete cost of all the services, including any possible changes to the LDRs and zoning laws, as well as questions coming back from the state, and to include deliverables.
Too long.
Well, he can,
Please separate the motion so that I can execute it.
okay, can you separate that?
That's my motion.
Okay, that's the motion. We had a second.
Not good.
I'm calling the vote. Town Clerk?
Vice Mayor Campo?
Aye.
Mayor Mayfield?
No.
Commissioner Fender?
aye.
Commissioner Kurzman? No. Commissioner Tompak?
No.
All right.
Madam Mayor,
I'm-
if you'd like, no, we're not, that motion failed?
Yes.
Okay. So we have the presentation from the last workshop, if you'd like to see it.
Well, but this, again, this was given to us as, hey, we have a cost savings option. It's not 200 anymore, it's 77. So is this going to end up costing us $200,000?
Sir, I think it's going to cost you less is what you asked us to bring you back. When the presentation was given to you, the feedback was it was a great presentation. It was very detailed. That was from the commission, and we can pull the minutes. And you were very comfortable with moving forward. But you were not comfortable with the price. And so you asked that we work on reducing the price. So your mayor took the time to participate, not as a negotiator, but just to watch, as I worked with the planner to reduce that cost.
Okay.
All right, is there any more discussion? All right, can I get a motion to approve the contract for comp plan fiscal year 2020-2021?
So moved.
Can I get a second? I'll second. All right, call the vote, please.
Commissioner Tompak?
Yes.
Commissioner Kurzman? Yes. Commissioner Fender?
No,
Mayor Mayfield?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Campo?
No.
All right. Now we will move on to resolution number 902, which involved that cost, and that is why we did that before. So, resolution number 902, budget amendment number 2. Town Attorney, could you please read the resolution title into the record?
Resolution number 902 is a resolution of the Town Commission of the Town of Sewalls Point, Florida, adopting an amendment to the 2020-2021 fiscal year budget, directing the town manager to take action to implement budget amendment number 2 and providing for an effective date.
Thank you very much. Is there any discussion amongst the commission, or if you wanted to ask Cheryl any questions? All right, seeing none, can I get a motion to approve resolution number 902?
Wait, now, this is the playground.
This is a whole, I spoke to Cheryl about Exhibit A behind the resolution is a journal entry to move the playground money, you're correct, and also true up expenses, and it includes the comprehensive planning cost. So Cheryl, would you please come up here and be available to answer any questions?
Madam Mayor, Commissioners, so as part of our mid-year review and also closing out the audit, we've done a true-up of our anticipated revenue, most notably a decrease in interest revenue, because to date, we've probably only received about $5,000 and originally budgeted $45,000 for the year. Building permits have increased. We are at 98% of budget to actual for the year, so we've increased that revenue. Additionally, we held a special magistrate session last month that imposed some tree mitigation fees that will be, I assume the town attorney is diligently working on those to get those out. And then also including the comprehensive planning, the master planning services, some additional funds for street maintenance because we are already over budget. The playground, just removing that from unrestricted and rolling that into the playground budget. And then at the bottom there, that $750,000 for South Sewalls Point Road, it's just a general ledger code, a better way to track it so that we're calling them the phases that we know of, Phase 1, Part 2 construction versus just a general construction and land.
Thank you, Cheryl. Commissioner Fender?
So I'm looking at this list of changes, and I'm trying to relate it back to the negative $363,000 I see at the bottom line of the budget we passed through, the P&L we passed through the consent agenda. So how do I make a correlation between that, and maybe there is none, but I'm just wondering what that really means, the negative $363,000 and the impact of this overall budget amendment.
Could you pull up the financials for me? I'm not sure what the negative $363,000 is that you're speaking
It's
of.
possible that I'm reading it wrong as well. I read it pretty quickly, but
That's okay. I mean, I know our net income to date is about $900,000. It could be a budget.
It's the year-to-date
The
loss that
annual
we would be
budget loss.
that's from reserves, I think.
What page would you like me to put on the screen?
page 7 of 7, last page.
The budget.
That's it. There you go.
Year nine.
Negative 363,704,000. 193% below plan is what I,
So that's because we haven't received the grant funds that have been budgeted up at the top.
okay. So that's not the annual budget, right? That's.
I thought that was the transfer from
that you're-
reserves, because we have that, that's our budgeted loss, and then we transfer from reserves, right? Because of the,
So
I want that $363,000 back. I'll just be blunt. And if this is the way to get it, that's why I would vote no for $75,000 for the comprehensive plan, because we've got some serious projects we have to complete.
right, so if you go to the top, to the total income, let's stop, yep. And then if we go here, so the annual budget is 3.9, sorry, I can't, I'm probably legally blind and have had glasses since I was 6.
We can give you the report, so you don't have to read so far away.
Sorry. So there is the transfer from 147 that was already approved.
Oh, you got it?
You are so kind. You are so good to me. Commissioner
You
Campo,
said-
now I see now I see the issues.
You
that
said
have.
legally blind, so legal counsel came and showed it to you.
I just think I just now have such sympathy for you when you had that horrific report the first time, Commissioner Campo, that we're able to see. So really the annual budget has 4.8 in expenses and only
Yeah.
3 point, 3.9 in revenue. And so a lot of that, though, is going to be your capital improvement that we're not going to do if we don't have that resulting income source. So,
Well, I guess I want the real annual budget of, or a column that has the ifs and thens. If this is a conditional annual budget, based on what you just said, some portion that we may or may not receive.
Town manager, do you have the budget that we approved back in, the one that we approved in July? Sure, let me get to the website. Because that should be the same number.
so it seems like there may be some income missing because I know that the actual annual budget is closer to 4.2 million and we gave a balanced budget. And so there may be
Yes.
maybe a grant that didn't get in there in terms of into QuickBooks.
Well, I buy that too. Also a reason to tighten our belt, right?
Mr. Fenn, Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I want to be very clear. We are paying the bills every month, operationally very sound, as you see month after month.
Of course.
And so I just, especially since we're live streaming, I want to make sure that we're not putting out a wrong message that we have overspent, because that's not the case.
Well, I agree with you 100%, and I don't know that we have or haven't. I believe we pay our bills diligently, but I know that we're doing a budget amendment to ask to put more money in, and we're going to spend some money on a comprehensive plan, right? So are we spending more money than we're budgeted for? Asking for, that's what a budget amendment is, right? We're asking for
No,
a change.
sometimes a
in the
budget amendment is moving money.
It's a net zero effect.
net
Okay, all
zero
right, that's
effect.
good to know.
Yeah.
It's in the memo, it's a net zero effect.
Good catch.
Net
So-
zero of a negative $363,000.
No, you got it, you caught something there with the negative 363,000, and I misspoke when I said it was the transfer. I think I was thinking of a prior year, but that's not supposed to be that, because according to this, the revenue, which should match up, this revenue budget from 2021 should match our total revenue from here, and it doesn't.
Okay.
So there's a mistake in the QuickBooks, so
Correct.
Okay.
this is the one we approved up here, and if you go down to the bottom, Michelle,
I'm sorry.
it should be a 0. No, it was a good, I didn't catch it, good catch.
Can we go back to the
Oh.
other page that's correct? The one you just had
No,
up?
no, the ending page of the budget,
In the budget,
now here, just on the budget.
You just had it a second ago.
I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can we go to the bottom
down
line
to
of
the
this?
bottom.
I assume it's going to say 0.
Well, it will say 4249, and the revenue are 4249.
Right, so somewhere in there is, so with the revenue only at 3.9, it should be 424, and so that would true up that annual budget so that it would be 0. So I need to.
We'll
look
learn
at
about that
QuickBooks.
later, I assume.
There's something wrong in the
Okay,
report.
so we'll get back to us on that. We feel confident that that's not really a,
That is not the budget we
okay,
approved.
all right.
Oh, I know why.
This one.
It's the Martin County Utilities, which is part of the budget amendment that's in here right now. So part of this is the 116,000. There's nothing budgeted for that, even though we've collected that reimbursement. So we need to add that to the budget and recognize that money that we received from them. That was part of North Sewalls Point Septic to Sewer. It was almost 200,000, but most of it was collected last year, and then some was collected this year.
All right.
So that's
Well, you
part
make
of
me feel
what's in
better.
there.
Okay.
So see Martin County Utilities right there, it has 101,000 for your budget. It's not in this annual budget.
Commissioner Campo, I apologize, you've been waiting.
Yeah, you're saying and assuring us that you're collecting $100,000 in tree mitigation fees. Are we counting our chickens before they're hatched? Do we know that those people are paying those fees?
I mean, we've collected 46,900 to date. And the auditors did just recently sit down with me to look at anything that was duplicated, unrecoverable. I mean, we're getting $10,000 checks.
But along with your budget amendment, you're expecting $120,000, and we've only received $46,000. Have tree penalties, or whatever you call them, tree mitigation fees, have they been pledged? Have we received commitments that those monies are coming in, or are we counting those before they're hatched?
we'll be putting liens on those properties if they're not paid.
Yes.
Yeah,
Madam
but
Mayor.
they may never
if I
pay
may.
that, right?
Again, Madam Mayor, again, to refer it
I've
back
got the
to.
floor. I've got the floor.
Sorry.
I'd like to know what the status is of those tree penalties and revert back to the budget, because I think we're getting a little beyond ourselves. And I'd also like to ask, is the building fee of $275, are you saying that that's going to be increased by an additional $68,500? And then I'd also like to ask, what is the master planning services of $15,000 of expense? Is that in addition to the $80,000 that some of the commissioners just voted for?
Okay, so I'm going to go through the ones that I just wrote, and if I miss a question, if you'll just remind me.
Sure.
So for building fees, am I saying that they're going to exceed the $275,000 by $68,000? Yes.
Okay.
We have,
253 so far.
yeah, and,
Okay.
I'm sorry, yes, sir.
Okay.
And then the 15,000 is for part of the Treasure Coast Regional Planning portion. So that is their fee that is separate, and that is in addition to the $80,000 that was just approved for your comprehensive planning.
Okay, but again, do we have anything in writing that we're going to get those tree penalties of $100,000? I think that if you'd like to bring us up to speed on that, that would be great. And, I tend to forget my questions, so that's why I need to kind of keep the thing rolling. But do we have anything in writing, because we had 2 large tree fees, or what would you call them, penalties, or, and that's a lot of income to anticipate, because they're so new. I mean, this is a whole new source of revenue. So it's odd to count that when it's an unproven methodology and process. But if you've got,
Well, I would say GFOA says if the revenue is reasonable and recoverable, that we would count it. And to date, it's been reasonable and recoverable. And any amount that we've billed, we have collected.
Okay. Thank you, Cheryl. And then also the revenue, as you said, it's a budget, it's what's anticipated, and we haven't spent the comprehensive plan money yet. So if you're worried about, that's how you work a budget. It's what you think you're going to spend and what you think you're going to get, not what you've gotten and what you've already spent. So this makes sense to me. And Commissioner Fender.
I just was curious about the zero-sum game. I assume since we're moving these around, we're wondering where we're taking them from.
You wonder where we're taking.
Yeah, obviously, we're moving these into different budget buckets, right? So I'm curious, what budget buckets are sacrificing to make up for the,
top numbers are revenue, the bottom are expenses.
oh, the top, above the break?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, thank you.
And I would imagine, Glenn, that, the documents that were served to the residents who had the tree fines, that's about as in writing as you can get, correct? They will have legal consequences if they do not pay, correct?
Correct. They both received the judge's, Magistrate Tyson's orders. They, if they're not paid within 30 days, then the town proceeds to file a lien on their property. There is, a reasonable expectation that they'll pay, but if they don't, there'll be a lien that may be satisfied whenever they sell their property. So,
Dave speaks.
you're not sure when that money's going to come in. If the people they pay their bills on time, it should come in soon.
Okay.
If they don't, then you have a lien on their property.
Commissioner Kurzman, we haven't heard from you. Welcome.
The only thing I would suggest is that we don't add the money in until we physically get the money on the trees. Even if there's a lien, that property might not sell for 30 years. Until we actually get a check, cash, whatever in, I would not put it into the budget for that reason, in my opinion. Because money's not in our bank account, it may not come in anytime soon. But if they say, oh, lien is good, but the lien doesn't mean you have that money in the checkbook. It's not there. Like I said, it's only 30 years now, so.
All right, thank you, Dave. Commissioner Tompak?
Just one quick question. Are there any guidelines for moving restricted money or money that's in restricted accounts to unrestricted accounts?
Well, it depends on how restricted it is. So if there are things that are restricted by bond covenants, then yes, and that's something that would need to be voted on. If something was earmarked, which was the playground, that's an intent that you have made as the commission, but not anything legally obligating you to spend it on that. So there's committed, there's restricted, there is another term that I was just looking for, so.
Encumbered.
Yeah, encumbered, so it just depends on what that source of money is for. If it's for like a general obligation bond, then yes, you can't spend that money, but something like this.
Like, if we have some money set aside for storms and we put that in a restricted account, the same thing? Is that, I know it's not, understand that bonds you definitely can't do anything with, but the, storm pay or storm expense, you could say, well, I don't think we're going to have a storm this year, let's spend the money on something else.
You would have that option.
I would hope we wouldn't do that, but,
Right, but there's nothing, if that is the intent of the commission, that's something that you certainly could do, yes.
okay.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl. I mean, this is just all the expenses we've had have been approved. We just approved the contract. This is just an effort to get our accounting up to date and correct so you can move forward.
Correct.
So could I get a motion to approve the resolution?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I've been waiting. So I want to share with the commission that I share the same concerns. As a person that's not with an accounting background, I say, can I pay the bills with this money? Is this real money? And that's the kind of questions that Cheryl and I will go back and forth on. And we've done it for grants in the past. As you know, you used to have budgets in front of you that included grants that were not monies in your account. And so when we are unsure of the right answer, we call the auditors and we ask their expertise. And we say, we have $100,000 in fines that has gone through the special magistrate. Our legal attorney has now placed the appropriate documents through the county, whatever the case may be. How do we account for it? And so some of the feedback, that we get is how we make these decisions to put them into the account or not into the account. And so I hope that what you see here is your team working together to make sure that these are true-ups. So these are things that we voted on. These are items that were followed up on. These are punitive in nature when it comes to fines that were put through a special magistrate process. And we have to account for monies that need to come into the system and have a PO available for it. And actually, our town attorney can give you, which I believe we sent you via email, all of the documentation for each one of the fines in those large amounts.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. And yes, the accounting is just to give you the most accurate picture, and the net budget is zero. And so if we can make a more accurate picture of what is actually occurring, then we need to be trusting our finance officer and moving forward. Commissioner Campo.
Yeah, I think the use of the word true-up in this situation is inaccurate. A true-up is a 1-inch putt. This is probably like a 12-footer. A true-up is a sure thing, and we have some question marks. So we can move ahead and call the question, but I'll be voting against it because there's too many unknowns. But we can move on.
And Madam Mayor, I would like to again extend my opportunity.
Town manager.
I'd like to extend the opportunity to each and every commissioner, Commissioner Campo, Vice Mayor, to meet with me in your financial, what's your GFCO? Your certified financial government official at any time to go over this before a meeting.
Okay. Thank you, town manager. Yes, this is just accounting. All right, I would like to, can I get a motion to approve resolution number 902, budget amendment number 2? Okay. If there is no motion to approve budget amendment number 2, what would you like to see? What motion do you propose to try to get the books accurate or to address? We do have to get the playground. That is just basic, moving it from equity to account. So just approve, what do you want to see to approve the budget amendment? Or what do you want taken out? Or what don't you like?
I'm thinking. Okay,
Commissioner
so I'll address first the last comment you made, Town Manager, which was, please meet with us anytime you want on the budgets. I would say my response to that is, if you believe you are coming forward with a potentially controversial amendment, ordinance, request, I would say it behooves you as professional staff to do the appropriate politics to make sure you get us in your office to talk through those issues rather than waiting for us to come and track you down so that we have to have this conversation on the dais. So, and I don't know. I mean, I'm concerned about the 75 grand for the comprehensive plan. I'm concerned about the potentially unrecoverable tree mitigation fees that might be leaned for 30 years. I'm concerned about cost, given not that these individuals, but on the whole, we've got some pretty friggin' huge projects that we've got to find money for that maybe grants won't come through to do. So, yeah, I'm a little concerned. We're tossing around casually the concept of floating budgets, floating bonds, and raising millage, and that's not, my job is to keep a foot on the budget and the expenses and keep our tax rates down. So, yeah, it's hard for me to come up with a responsive change to a proposal on this because I haven't had the chance to do the politics with you, or the conversation with you that you just requested we have. My job to come seek you out to understand that while you guys are doing the professional staff work every week, every day that we pay you for, to bring this forward. So, no, yeah, I'm happy to talk to you any day of the week. You can call me up anytime you want and call me by my first name, not the term commissioner, and we'll bang it out. But it's hard for me to do it here on live stream. So, yeah, I don't have a responsive.
Okay. I have a solution. Okay, how about we, Cheryl and Town Manager, if you guys will go back and, because we do need to make a budget amendment for the playground transfer, that's correct? Don't we need to, or do we not need to? Okay.
Correct, and I guess I would ask how you want to recognize the Martin County Utilities income that we've received.
No idea.
Okay, then I'll work with you. We'll put together a budget amendment, and I'll put together a memo, and we'll explain it well about what is actually occurring at the next meeting.
Sure.
And we'll leave out the more speculative items, and the ones that are not speculative, we'll put through, and any extra we'll put to retained earnings, or,
May I,
anyways. So
Madam
we'll
Mayor,
take care of that. Yes.
may I ask one question, however, though?
Yes.
You did just approve a contract for $75,000 without any funding source, so.
That's true.
So it would be prudent to,
Not going to approve that one. I voted no against that.
Okay.
I mean.
How about you, can you put together a quick?
I'll vote for the playground.
The building permit fees are, we all agree those are most likely going to come. So we can say that is income that we are pretty sure of. And that can help to offset the comprehensive planning. There's got to be another revenue in there that we're pretty sure we're going to get. And that can offset the rest of the comprehensive plan. So
Okay.
if we can get a quick little budget amendment
Sure.
to do that, then we'll do that and approve it. And would that work for you, commissioners? And that way there's no,
You can even call a special meeting if you like. I don't care.
okay.
Call a break and we can fix it for you.
Oh, right now.
But-
Okay, that's fine
No, we
too.
have to advertise
Sure.
it, right?
That works.
A resolution we have to advertise?
I don't know.
All right, we'll take a 5-minute break. Figure that out. Cheryl is distributing a revised resolution number 902, which is budget amendment number 2, that I'm hopeful the other commissioners will approve. This should cover the costs of the approved contract for the comprehensive plan. I'll give you guys a minute to look at it, see if there's any discussion. Town Attorney, do you want to read, should you read it again because it's different, even though it's the same words at the beginning?
Sure.
Okay.
So this is a revised resolution number 902, resolution of the Town Commission of the Town of Sewalls Point, Florida, adopting an amendment to the 2020-2021 fiscal year budget, directing the town manager to take action to implement budget amendment number 2, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Fender?
So I see we've got the comprehensive plan in, but we have the playground out. What's the implication of leaving the playground out?
Oh, goodness. No, I was just trying to make it simple so that we could because it was an inflammatory subject, this is just to cover and do it legally and correctly in the best manner for the town, the best interest of the town, since we just approved the contract, to show that we have the money in the budget to cover that. And so the playground is just more housekeeping that we could do at the next meeting, and then it would make it less confusing. So that's why we did that. Any other discussion? Can I get a motion to approve resolution number 902?
So moved.
Second.
All right, call the vote, Town Clerk, please.
Commissioner Fender?
No.
Commissioner Kurzman?
Yes.
Commissioner Tom Peck?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Campo?
Nay.
Mayor Mayfield?
Yes. All right. We're going to move forward and go on to new business, grant management contract renewal. Town Manager, would you please introduce this item?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
Commissioner, the Town of Sewalls Point went out to bid for grant management services with RFP 2019-001 in December 2018. On March 26, 2019, the town contracted with the teamed up dual respondents of Cape Canaveral Scientific Incorporated, also known as CCSI, and Captech Engineering Incorporated, Captech. The scope of services included grant management and other related services as outlined in Exhibit A of the March 26, 2019 contract. Although the full not-to-exceed amount of $190,000 has been expensed, the deliverables outlined in the contract under the scope of services are not complete at this time. The deliverables are: 1, grant management, monitoring, and final project report. That's ongoing through the terminus date, so it's not a problem yet. Water quality assurance project, plan development and monitoring. That's Phase 1, Part 2, also right in the midst of what we're doing now. Educational and public outreach, including social media, and that's due May 2021. In April 2020, an amendment to the contract was drafted to include the North Sewalls Point Septic to Sewer Grant at number LP 43030. As extended, billing has occurred and was in need of true-up. That project is closed and complete. The original contract offered a not-to-exceed amount of $190,000 in services. The contractors have collectively billed for over $205,000 to date, leading us to the need to determine next steps. When discussing the budgetary nature of our grant structures, as presented by the grant managers, it is evident that the previous not-to-exceed amount will not be enough for this year. The attached proposal for services from CCSI and Captech are anticipated costs for this next year, March 20th, 21 through March 2022, for the contract to be renewed, for the annual renewal. As related to the accompanying tasks, the breakdown below can be reviewed in further detail in the attachment of backup information on Exhibit C. Grants applied and awarded for. What I have down here is the information that we have within our records since the inception of the contract include the Indian River Lagoon Council 2020, $150,000, the 2019 state appropriations North Sewalls Point septic to sewer add-on of $48,010 for the extension. Grants applied but not awarded include the Indian River Lagoon South Florida Water Management District, that's a $1.7 million request. The 2021 State Appropriation South Sewalls Point Road, $900,000 request. And grants applied for and, for lack of a better term, pending review, 2021 State Appropriation Sewer Business and Town Hall Connection for $185,000 request. The budget impact. If the commission chooses to accept the proposal, the combined services of $691,500 for this year, the money will need to be deducted from the unrestricted reserves fund. The budget amendment has been set up for your consideration. While we can encumber the funds to ensure they are set aside, the town manager and town finance director do not recommend reducing the fund for outsourced administrative fees without full consideration of all options. Listed are next steps that are possible for you to take, and staff is requiring direction from the commission. Would you like me to go through each, Madam Mayor?
I guess if you want to go through at least the options.
Okay. Options are included to, but are not limited to, moving forward with the one-year renewal, accepting overall proposal with a cumulative not-to-exceed amount of $691,500. One-year renewal accepting only the grant management proposal from CCSI not to exceed $370,000. One-year renewal accepting only the specific grant writing services, CCSI not to exceed $89,500. Reject the renewal option and go back out to RFP for another competitive bidding process. Using the clawback option to recapture the difference between the not-to-exceed amount established and invoiced. Move forward with a one-year piggyback on a contract from City of Port St. Lucie State, Federal, and Foundation grant writing services, which that contract is $50,000. Allow the expiration of the contract and instruct your staff to operate within-house to support the needs, or any other recommendation that you may have.
Okay.
Technical assistance, which is what we get provided by CapTech Engineering, will be needed for each infrastructure grant application, as the requirements typically involve an engineer report. This ideally may be done under separate contract. The nature of the dual respondents creates confusion with billing and invoicing. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay, all right, thank you, Town Manager. I'm going to open this up to any discussion amongst the commission. The staff is looking for direction, so what are your thoughts? Commissioner Tompeck.
Yeah, I was looking at this, and I'm wondering if we're looking at this correctly in terms of the options. And what I'm thinking about specifically, when you talk about a one-year renewal accepting the overall proposal of the cumulative not-to-exceed amount, $691,500, I can't in my wildest dreams imagine we could spend $691,000 in a year, and it certainly wouldn't be part of the balance of this fiscal year. So I'm wondering if we're really comparing, apples to apples, because I think the $691,000 includes, the balance of the complete balance of the work in terms of Phase 2 and Phase 3, some of which probably will not be, you won't be getting to in any time soon, based on, how we get these grants. So I'm not sure it's really the right way to compare them. And maybe just make it a little bit clearer. I think what I'd like to see is, if we're going to be looking at a one-year renewal, is to really identify the one-year cost, which we don't have here. We have the overall cost, and I think that's the right way to do it if you're going to compare it to, looking at other options such as a one-year piggyback or whatever of another contract.
Any other thoughts? Commissioner Campo?
Yeah, I applaud the town manager in employing the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, and I thought that was a great proposal that they gave, and we were expecting a report back in a couple weeks. And one of the things that Kim Delaney had put on her proposal was that she was going to talk to us about the total capital improvement budget with different funding options. And I'm wondering if we shouldn't look to see what that, we're going to spend $10,000 for the study, if we shouldn't look at that when we're considering, our future grant needs. So I would tend to put this off for a month until we could dovetail those two together.
I would ask that to Commissioner Tom Peck's point, the 691,000, I believe that is addressed in Exhibit C, is that correct, Town Manager?
Yes, it's on your screen now. I would ask if we can, if you'd like for confirmation, the vendors are here, the contractors are here, and this information I received from the contractors when I asked what expenses we can expect for the next year.
Yes, I feel that sounds like good to ask them exactly, and I do want to clarify because I believe it said in the memo, the 691,000 was for the next year, March 2021 to March 2022, which is the following year, but it does, our fiscal year intersects in there. And Cheryl, the budget amendment is for that full amount. How, when our fiscal year ends on September 30th, how does that, why would you do it all?
So it would be a carry forward budget.
Okay.
What you've encumbered this year, we would carry forward that encumbrance into the next year.
Okay, all right, thank you. So may I invite the vendors to maybe address that idea that that would be the amount that would be spent in the next year, or could be spent?
Good evening, Commissioners, Mayor Mayfield,
Hi.
Town Manager Berger. The email that I received from Town Manager Berger was, can you, regarding renewal of grant management contract, can you please provide costs for Phase 1 through 3? So Joe went and provided his costs, and I went and provided my, our company's costs. And so essentially, we basically put costs for all phases. We did not anticipate all phases were going to be done in FY '21-22. That being said, Phase 2 might get funding. We don't usually go to contract with construction until we get funding. And Phase 3 is not designed yet, so we're certainly not going to contract on that, and we don't have funding for it. Phase 4 is not even planned yet. So though there's costs out there, possible costs, it's not the 651, 691, whatever the number was, is a projected cost over maybe, 3 to 5 years. However, we always have to get the money ahead of schedule before you go break ground, because we don't have the money to front, and they get reimbursed for it. All of our contracts are advance pay. So we get the money, we get the contract invoice from the construction contractor, we give it to DEP, they put the money in our account, and then we cut a check. So because we're a small town, we qualified for that. So that's the way we try to do all business these days. So I think right now I think Joe can confirm this, but at any rate, I think right now we're on schedule for Phase 1, Part 2. We will be winding up the construction on that, and then we have to complete for DEP's contract. We have to do the water quality monitoring. So all of that, if we are to get back into construction in the next month or two, we cannot go out there until we get the HMGP contract executed, because that is part of our match to DEP and to Inner River Lagoon program. So those are local and state funds. HMGP is federal. They're all marrying and matching each other. So we can't, we have to, sit and wait till we get that contract. Plus, you can't do any construction on something until you get the contract from HMGP. So essentially, we're at 64% for part 2 for construction, and
Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
We-
I'm getting confused because when you started talking about the grants, I lose track of, what's what. Since I believe we're talking about the contract renewal because it was
Right.
we're at that 2-year point and we've reached the not to exceed and we have to decide whether to renew
Right.
or how to
So-
proceed. So I think we're kind of concerned with, as evidenced in the last conversation, what is the town going to pay for grant
right, so for Phase 1, Part 2, and Phase 1, Part 3, those are the projects that, is my understanding, is what we're going to get done in the next fiscal year. We may start on Phase 2, but we don't have the money for it right now, so we can't even, start, really projecting that forward. So that's where we're at. We are going to be working on Phase 1, wrapping everything up at this point. We've got the contract for $877,000 from HMGP. We haven't executed it yet, though, so we can't get in the field and do it. So that's what I'm projecting. The numbers on that were $30,000 to wrap up Part 2. For my cost, I'm not sure, we have a list of costs. Okay. And then to do all of Part 3, which will be, a 9-month or 8-month venture, there was 90 posted for that for our firm. I'm not sure what it is for CapTech.
Okay.
So it's 120 for grant writing. Grant management. I'm not sure what Joe's is.
Okay, so you're saying, so what is, we got to make a decision here about the contract. And, obviously, money and money spent is very important, as evidenced in all these conversations. I'm confused, when you're talking to me right now, I'm confused. I don't feel like.
Okay, so you've taken the South Sewalls Point grant management contract and other services. You've added sewer to it.
Yes.
With no money putting in. You've added, all of the other phases into that contract with no money putting in. You did not, we did not put money in last year. So spent on CCS over a 2-year period.
Right.
Like 26 months. I have a record that I was paid out just on South Sewalls Point Road, $89,500, just on South Sewalls Point Road. I was also asked to do sewer, which I wasn't even under contract with, so I worked under Joe Capra's firm. And I was asked to do Homewood, which is a completely separate project. So those accumulative costs, I'm not sure, I didn't do a whole checking back,
Right.
For the South Sewalls Point Road, though, project, $30,000 was paid by DEP. So of that $89,500, there was an outstanding amount of about $59,000 that the town paid. So that's where we're at on South Sewalls Point Road. That's the original 19-001 contract that you're talking about tonight for renewal. Last May, I was not at the meeting, but last May, you passed Amendment 1, which added grant writing services to it, and then tucked the construction elements for the sewer project in, so that I would then do the grant management on it. There was no money earmarked for sewer, for grant management. None. There was no money earmarked for Homewood. None. So I worked under Joe Capra, gave the invoicing to him, and so that total bill, I think, was in the neighborhood of $60,000. It might be $53,000, I'm not sure. But anyway, that's the total bill for sewer and Homewood over a full year period. So at this point, we've spent approximately 89, and then you've gotten back 30 of that. So we've spent out 59, or excuse me, 59 of the South Sewalls Point money that was designated for grant management services and the other 3 items. The other 3 items, I think, come to 120 of the 190. So we're pretty close to being in that bracket. 120 plus the 60 gets us to 180, so we still have 10,000 left, technically, if you include the DEP $30,000 payback that's already been billed and invoiced and received for cash that came in. So that's what's happened with the 19, -001. That's what happened with the contract. Amendment 1 added in grant writing. No money was put aside for grant writing and budgeted, to my knowledge.
Okay.
So our original fees for everybody else on the planet is $12,000 a grant. We dropped that price down to $7,500. I hate saying this it's just like I hate sharing grant proposals that we've done, because somebody can just whisk them away and go write their own grant proposal just like ours if you put it all in public record. So at any rate, we're working for you for almost 60% of our regular costs. That's what we work for you at.
Okay.
There's no guarantee on grants. We have a track record. People are fully aware of our track record. We've been working in the arena for 20-plus years. And so if you would like to go and work with Sustainable Strategies out of DC, I know Andrew Seth, I think that they do a lot of earmark stuff with the feds. I've never seen them in any of the arenas with DEP or anything, though.
Okay.
So that's where we're at. I think if you want to hear from Joe as far as their costs for this coming year, ours is 30, and then if we get into all Part 3, it'll be the 90.
Okay. Joe? Okay. You can go, Joe.
Did you want to ask her a question?
No, he said to wait.
Okay. All right, so the memo up on the wall, I guess, is probably what we should go through. So the question has been, what are we going to spend this year? Now, that could depend on how many grants we pursue, okay? And there are options on that. But what Amy has put up there on the first two numbers up there, you have the 30,000. We are working, so everybody understands, we are working in phase 1, okay? And we've had to go on hold because we waited on the HMGP money. So we have been working in the field on Part 2. So as she showed, she needs 30,000. We will finish phase 1 this year, okay? And probably before the fiscal year, okay? That's our hope, okay? Let me say, we could have in construction, but let's be honest, folks. We get into the rainy season, I can't guarantee things, but the fact that we could finish that technically, okay? So you have to finish phase 1, part 2, which is her 30,000, and on this paper, phase 1, part 3, okay? And that phase 1, part 3 is the money we are getting for the HMGP. So those are definitely going to be spent on that list up there, what you're going to spend this fiscal year. That would be my goal, okay?
And that doesn't include your costs, Joe?
No, this just includes Amy's costs here, okay? You're definitely going to spend that much money based on these numbers here, okay? We may, again, phase 2, phase 3, we have kind of taken them out of order, phase 2 and phase 3. We tried to apply for an appropriation. We had a problem with that one, okay, for phase 2. And we are applying, trying to get phase 3 started because the reason we moved to phase 3 was for two reasons. Number one, we have a HMGP grant already in that location, and we're trying to get HMGP to increase it from what was called the Homewood grant, or was just an outfall, to a phase 3 grant, which includes a much larger scope of work, okay? So I'm only telling you about phase 2 and 3. Most likely, we could get into phase 3 work. Probably, we could do phase 2 grant work, but we most likely will get into phase 3 work after sometime this year, okay? Sometime this year, because you have to understand, we have to apply for these grants when they come up. You don't apply for them, and the state has their procedures, and the federal government has their procedures. IRL, Indian River Lagoon, has their procedures. All these people, all these different grant agencies, they don't care that we're trying to use one of their grants to match one of their other grants, okay? We have to put that together for them. So anyways, point being is, I've already told you, you got $130,000 that you could pay for Amy's time, okay? Relative to my cost, okay, that would relate to, again, going to the next page. The next page, we have to, in the Phase 1 grant, DEP wants us to do what we call a report on how we're going to monitor the amount of nutrient loads that we take out of the water when we go through a stormwater treatment area. They call that report a QAP, okay? A quality assurance plan, okay? We have to do all sorts of things. We monitor the water in and out, and we basically have to have a procedure to take that to a lab, and it's pretty specific what they want done, okay? And we have to have 6 events, okay? So a minimum of 6 events. Now, the 6 events fall within a window of 2 inches of rain, okay? And it has to fall over a weir, so we have to kind of, it may rain more than 2 inches, and it may not, okay? So we have to find those events to get to that. But the point I'm trying to make is, in the original $190,000 grant contract that you had, that money is in this $122,000, okay? So we haven't spent it yet because we have to build the project to do the monitoring, okay? And so we will have to do that work there, which is monitoring. It is a public education, which may be a sign, it may be memos that go out and so forth, emails, and it'll have a QAP report. That's 122. You most likely will start spending that when we finish the construction out there, okay? Which is probably going to be somewhere in the area of August forward. So you're going to spend some of that money. You're not going to spend all that money this year, okay? You will spend a portion of that, okay? Make sense? Go ahead.
You said the 122,000 had already been paid with the 190,000 that we've already expensed. Will you clarify that?
Yeah, that is, if you look at the contract that we originally were hired under for grants, okay? It was 190,000, I think it was the number what was in there for that, okay? That was for handling this work, this $122,000 worth of work. So it was in 190, okay? But we ended up going after more grants, so you paid us for grants, writing grants in lieu of that work because we couldn't do it till the project got built, okay? So you'd asked, what are we going to spend this year? We're going to spend a portion of the 122, okay? You're certainly going to at least have to spend the QAP because we've got to write the procedures we're going to follow to do the monitoring, okay? So I think, Michelle, that's what, 20,000, something like that?
Yes.
Something like that. You're going to at least spend that much money, okay? Obviously, we're going to start monitoring, but we will not have much of that spent this year because we have to wait for these rain events. And we monitor it every week. I mean, that's what you have to do this process, okay? We probably will wait on some of the public education. You know, we can claim some of the stuff that Michelle's been putting out for emails and things like that and newsletters. We can claim those things, and we won't put the sign out there till the project is finished being built. But we probably won't go after all of that this year. It'll come probably after that, okay? So anyways, I just want you to know that you're going to spend a part of that. You need to, and again, my goal is to have Phase 1 finished, okay? So you're going to spend money on Phase 1, Part 3. That is the HMGP grant that currently they've given you 870 in the contract that you've signed, that they're going to hopefully sign between now and April 4th. Hopefully they're going to sign that and give it back to us because that's when our contractor is going to start back up to finish that job. Okay? So anyways, we have to do some work on that contract, okay? So you may spend $10,000 on this. At this point I don't know, but again, we are going to have to apply for some more money because all they put into, we have to apply for more money. So this is this is what has happened, okay? We, the town, originally applied for $877,500 for HMGP money for Phase 1 work, right? We applied for that. We then needed to, we expanded the project. We handled we did parts and some stuff up in front of Sewalls Meadows. We did something White Fence Acres. We did Margarita. We did Mandalay. We expanded that project, okay? And so we have actually sent them documentations, and it's embedded in the charts that I've been sending to you, that we showed that we've probably got close to sorry. So we have shown them that we could spend up to almost $1.3 million in lieu of that 877,500. We could spend about 1.3 million instead of that. And so we have to now ask for that additional funding. They've told us that based on our benefit cost ratio, we should be able to get that. Now, that's just information that we received from the project manager from FEMA, okay? But what she did is she's known that we've shown a cost-benefit ratio that we can go up to $1.3 million, okay? But she obviously said, listen, I'm going to get you the money you need as quick as I can, so I need to get you the 877. You need to come in and request the remaining money. That's what we're doing at this point. We're getting the 877, get the contractor moving, and then we're going to make an additional request for the additional money, okay? So, but that money would be $1.3 million is what we technically know we want to get from that grant. So I'm just pointing this out to you. We have to go and spend more money on phase 1, part 3 to go get that money. We've shown them in a cost-benefit ratio that it works. We just now have to make that request. Now, we are going to ask for more than that, because what we did is we went and got some permitting done on that phase that also added some pumps that was requested, and we said, listen, we will have a backup system with pumps. So that increased the number. So it's going to go up a little bit, and that's in that 10K, okay? That's what I need to go and ask for additional money and to show that we're going to upgrade the benefit cost ratio to account for that pump system. So that's what I know you're going to spend this month, or this year, okay? That's what I know. Everything I just told you is what you're going to spend between Amy and ourselves.
Could you, you said a portion of the 122,000. Can you estimate?
Well, it is probably highly unlikely that we will put the monitoring equipment out there. So I'm before the end of the fiscal year, only because I'm going to assume with rainy season and everything, it may get out, but it may not. So we have 22, you're going to spend at least the 22 of the 122.
Okay.
That's
That's just for this fiscal year, or the whole, I think that number was originally for the 12 months after now.
Right. Well, it's actually, we really don't want to, the reason we don't want to, I know this is going to confuse you. I apologize. There's a lot of moving parts on this thing. There's a lot of moving parts here. We have a monitoring equipment that is based on having a stormwater treatment area in, okay? We put that in the phase 1, part 2 work, but we didn't dig the whole stormwater treatment area because we have to use that fill to fill phase 1, part 3 area, okay? And if we finish the stormwater treatment area, we would have had to take the fill out of town and bring it back in. We would have seen an extra cost to do that. So this idea of waiting on FEMA money has made us hesitate on certain items and then do other things. So we've had to kind of back off on that. So the stormwater treatment area isn't built, and I'm not going to build it, quite frankly, until I move into the part 3 work, okay, for the fill reasons, okay? So that's, I know that's another quirky item in this, but that's, I have to decide what we're going to do. Does it make more sense to go take fill out of town and bring it back in? No, because we have no place to store it either, okay?
But you have to finish the monitoring by June 30th, because we've already had that appropriation for 5 years.
Okay, but June 30th of next year. Next year. So the point is, I still have about a year of work to do on it. But so I'm just telling you, I'm not going to, it's highly unlikely I'm going to put that equipment out there until I get the stormwater treatment area and all this other items put in place, because we want to get the information. And believe me, we'll probably get the 6 events. We say a year, we'll probably get the 6 events within 6 months, because we're going to be doing it in the rainy season. So we should get the money easy, quick, or get the monitoring done in time. That's our goal, is to meet those deadlines, again, for the grant. All right, now I've confused you totally now, so let's go to
So
the
you
next
said
item.
20, you said 22,000 plus the 10,000, so you're saying 32,000 for your services for grants for the next 12 months?
32 is going to be between now and this fiscal, it's in this fiscal year. This fiscal, I'm using October 1, right?
But
That's your
I
fiscal.
think the contract is, we did a 2-year, right, or the not to exceed, so really we should be looking at the next 12 months if we wanted to be accurately determining, what we were going to do for the contract?
Well, the problem, first of all, you had asked what we're going to spend in this fiscal year. So I was trying to point that out. But you're right, we are going to be taking money from this contract, grant contract, and using it in the next fiscal year.
Okay,
And it's probably 12 months. You're absolutely right. It's
Okay.
going to be 12 months.
all right, Commissioner Fender?
Sure. Are we done with the presentation?
Did you have any questions for him? or-
I have questions, but I'll want to wait till it's time for discussion.
I think he's done.
Okay. So, I think we're blessed to have the expert skills of Amy and Joe. The best thing about that relationship right now is that we have a track record, right? So we know the success we've had over the last year or so. And based on that, we should be able to, maybe the past is no predictor of the future, but at least it would give us a hook to hang our hat on what we could expect. The problem with this is that I'm looking at what I would consider to be massive numbers, not offset by the success we've had and the percentage of what the overall win is, if I'm interpreting this correctly. So to me, looking at this, I don't know what not to exceed $691,000 means in relation to the amount of grants we might possibly win. Am I looking at that incorrectly?
I think the $691,000 is for phases 1 through 4.
Yeah, that's what
All
I'm saying.
phases.
My
We're not
point is,
doing
it's
1
not
through...
offset by the fact that it's some percentage of a $22 million, I don't know what, my point is, I don't know what the,
Well, no, but we're not doing 1 through 4. We're doing 1
Yeah.
and possibly 2.
right.
Okay.
And so I guess what I'm leading to is that maybe this would be easily digestible in some sort of table format that tells us, you've certainly acquired a certain amount of revenue for us to do the project we've done to date, and we've certainly paid you some percentage of that, I'm guessing. So it would be nice to know what you've already stated, I think, if I interpret it right, that you have a flat rate for a grant submission, and you're giving us a reasonable discount on that. But it would be interesting for us to know, regardless of whatever that is, what is that as a percentage of the win rate? We're investing this in you, and we theoretically should get this. At least I recall the conversation when we started this relationship, and it was a pretty big risk. Are we really going to invest this in in Amy, and are we really going to is this grant ever going to be awarded? And magically, most of them were.
Right,
And
yeah.
so, to me, it's a good investment, I
Yeah.
would say. But I don't really, from these 2 or 3 pages, I don't understand the ROI.
The errors, yeah.
Yeah,
The
so-
errors that occurred,
Yeah.
obviously there were errors. That's it.
Well, this is a hard game we're playing, and, you can't bat 1,000, right? You're going to throw a bunch out there, and some of them are going to...
And we were encouraged to apply again, and we were encouraged, we've
Yeah. So
followed
anyway,
up.
my point is, I'm having a hard time understanding how much, it's all further offset by complication of not knowing where it fits in budget cycles, right? So I
Right,
don't know.
right.
So I don't know, maybe there's better data or more, it can be clarified a little bit, and I'm not using that as a yay or nay. Right now, I'm not quite sure what I'm voting on. but-
So I had asked her, similar question, because we had this large number that was presented. I know Cheryl and Michelle had worked on this, and they have their backup for why these are the numbers they are, that they said would be the cost of the next.
I'm pretty confident that the numbers are
Right.
valid, I just don't know what they mean.
Right, and then we asked, what do they think they would be in the next 12 months? This is what the town's worst-case scenario, what we would spend on grant management. And then, so we asked them to come up, and I got $130,000 for Amy's services and $32,000 for Joe's services.
In
that's,
return for what?
grants that we can hopefully get.
How much in
Sounds
grants?
like the remaining work on
So, all right, so what is that?
Okay,
What does that
John
mean?
Tom- John Tom Peck, will you?
Sorry, go ahead.
Commissioner Tom Peck, you can go, you were waiting.
Well, there are a couple of things that I'm thinking about here. First of all, listening to this conversation, I wasn't involved in some of the original discussion on this, but it doesn't look like we did a very good job of managing the original contract in terms of the scope, all right? Because there are obviously things that weren't done that needed to be done or were planned on being done afterwards, but we continue to add scope without making any modifications to the contract. So shame on both of us for not doing a very good job on the contract. The second thing is, and it goes back to the original thing I brought up, is that when you were looking at the options, the first option with the one-year renewal, cumulative not to exceed amount of $691,500, that's just not accurate based on what we're hearing here. We're not talking about $691,500 for 1 year. We're talking about whatever the number you just gave, $150,000. And that should be the criteria for evaluating it against the other options.
Okay, so let's ask, because I know they work hard, town manager and Cheryl, this document, how did you come up with the $691,000 for the next 12 months? Because that was the contract.
The document you see on the screen was provided to me by the information sent to me by CapTech and CCSI. And if you like, I can get a series of email threads that give you that backup information. It's creating, it's how you create the sausage at the end of the day, so I did not provide that as part of your backup. And I was clearly saying, what can we expect for the expenses for the time from March 2021 to March 2022? And that was my clear question. And when we're saying that we're not working on Phase 3, is Phase 3 Homewood?
Yeah, we are working on that.
And we are
Again,
working on
it's already complicated enough, especially, to talk about phases and parts and everything. I haven't got to the Phase 2 and 3 stuff yet, guys. And we have to apply for those grants, or else you're going to be, and we got to apply for them. We may apply for most of them between now and the end of it, but we're not going to do the grant administration on them until we get them, okay?
A clarifying question. The appropriations grant that was applied for was for Phase 2?
That was Phase 2, yes.
Okay, so again, now I just heard that this was not about Phase 3 and it was not about Phase 2, and now clearly it is about Phase 3 and it is about Phase 2. It's okay if we want to redo this, but if you're asking me where this came from, this document came from the information provided to me, cut and pasted. The only thing I added is,
Okay, I just.
Yeah, these numbers are what we gave, Michelle. I agree with that.
The numbers,
But the point is, you got to understand, you've
didn't
asked,
know it was
if I
the
start
one
telling you about the different phases here, we just talked about building Phase 1, right? What I just started explaining, okay? And what you're going to spend in this fiscal year, because that was the request. What you have to now think about is, we have already spent money, we've spent money on Phase 2 appropriation grant, okay? We've spent money, we've spent going after that grant. Grant writing services, that's down below, okay?
we got 3 different services on there.
And so the point I'm trying to make is we are applying, if we wait till we finish Phase 1 and then start applying for Phase 2 and Phase 3, guess what, folks? We're going to be doing this for 10, 12 years. It just doesn't work that way. So what you are doing is a rolling grant request, okay? And so the point I'm trying to make to you is, you're not actually, again, you wanted to know what you're going to spend your money on this year. You're not going to probably be spending it on grant management at Phase 2, because we haven't even bought the land, we haven't even made a contract for the land yet out there. So you're not going to be managing that grant. We have to go get the grant first. So you're down over on these, you're down here into these grant writing requests.
So
And so-
I have a comment, because I do see Phase 2 with 120,000, town manager, will you go back to that page?
okay, sure.
120,000 not to exceed, which sounds like that would be all the money that would be spent on Phase 2. But we did do that appropriations request that is definitely not going to get approved because it didn't go in, and we paid for the grant management services, so that doesn't show up as, having gone towards that, meaning that's in that 190,000 that we've already spent. Is that correct, town manager?
Yes.
So it's not accurate in that sense, that we already have expenses for Phase 2 grant management that we didn't, and it's okay that we didn't get I understand that, it's okay. But it's slightly misleading that it looks like, okay, well, we haven't worked for Phase 2 yet. We have, we've paid for it, and it looks like it's something that we're starting fresh, and we've already paid for it. So if we pay $120,000 for Phase 2 in the future, that's really going to be $150,000 or whatever, 100 and, sorry, that was
But wait a minute, time out. Listen, again, you're talking grant management services. You don't start doing grant management services until we get a grant. We haven't got a grant on Phase 2 yet, okay? We've applied for a grant. That's the appropriation. So down here below there's a $7,500 price for going after a grant. That's the appropriation that you didn't get, okay? Correct?
That one?
That's what you're spending. So you got to make sure you keep this straight. You have grant management services and you have grant application services, okay?
Where's the-
We got to go get the grant first, then you can start managing the grant.
Now
Okay?
you have a new project coming in possibly for grant management and getting grants for the town and business sewer project that you guys have just added.
So what is the grant application expense?
Basically, we got to go
Where's that-
file for these grants for the different agencies. You filed for a grant for phase 2 for appropriation. $900,000? $700,000, $900,000 we applied for. We didn't get it, okay? It didn't get submitted, okay? So that's $7,500 for grant application, okay?
Okay.
That's really, as far as I can tell, you've spent money from Amy applying for that, and you spent money on me over here for technical services for that.
15,000, not 7. So where does that go? Because that would be something we should be looking at, right?
Well,
Is that not in your contract? I'm genuinely, because that's why we need to maybe redo this contract to Commissioner
Right,
Tompeck's
so
point. I don't understand.
Grant writing services were never budgeted. They were never added to the contract. Adding the service idea was so that
Okay.
we could provide those services under a contractual agreement.
Okay.
And not just, sort of tucking them under engineering or tucking them into management. So we added that. We just didn't add a line item to this current year's budget.
Right.
When you went from 20 to 21. We didn't add that line item for grant writing. We also didn't add the line item for, sewer per se. There was never, that North Sewalls Point Road project had to have grant management go with it. That was not listed under the original contract.
Right.
So the town had to pay for those services in order to get the work done.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So the only, originally, this was just a South Sewalls Point Road project that you hired for the original contract. Then you did an amendment, and Michelle went forward and added the grant writing, and she also tucked in the sewer, so we could just make sure that that was
Right.
all covered. But there was never money put in last year's budget for it.
So we
Okay.
used, so I believe what you did is you used the $190,000 money you had, I
Yes.
believe, for that work.
Yes.
So to answer your question, you did get the contract set up, okay? You may not have switched the money from, and described it from what you spent, the 190 was really for Phase 1 South Sewalls Point Road. It was for all this other stuff that we have to do that's part of those grants. So I'm just telling you,
Yeah, no,
you had to go amend the contract so you could pay us, and you can show a record that you had a contract for
Right.
those services. Because the next thing you need to realize is to get grants, you have to show a proper procurement procedure, or else they don't give you reimbursement for our time.
Okay.
That's what's,
Okay.
well, another thing so you did that. The problem is, I don't know if you made a budget adjustment because you actually paid out of the original contract for 190 to pay for that work. And I'm
Okay.
guessing that's what was done. I mean, they've been keeping track of where they're taking the money from.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Campo. Again, I apologize.
I think overall, the problem with what we're going through is the presentation of this mega data is unclear. And just like I had the issue with Bonnie, I want to make sure that I clearly understand and have been presented the information. I don't think the big picture was presented with Bonnie, because I don't know what that's going to look like in the end. That ship has sailed. But I think rather than throwing out these grants and labeling them with the dollar amounts, they should be presented in a clearer format. So we need to refer to the phases and the parts more clearly. We should go High Point to Margarita. I mean, we've been having this problem since day one. You know, it's all communication and labeling. As
Okay.
far as,
So, go ahead.
as far as,
I hear what you're saying. but
I
just wanna
think
go
we,
through some of them.
I think we need an anatomy of the anatomy of a grant. We should have the application, grant writing, management, monitoring, prepping. We've just got a whole, I mean, I'm glad that we have what we do, but we just have a whole bunch of data.
Right.
And it's unclear in order for us to make the decision. So I want to make sure that when we get a truck, it's the best truck for Jack.
Right, so would it be-
When we hire a planner, it's the best, and we know what it is. Because we're going to the voters, we're going to our citizens and saying, hey, we have a request for money. Well, it's logical for them to say, well, what is it for? And for us to try to explain that when it's unclear ourselves is the problem. Now, when we add scope and then we don't add, we're asking you to do more, you know, we should have that change. I'll say this to the town manager. She's done a great job with our finance person and our building official and our clerk. And by the way, this week's packet was best, okay? April, you did a great job. And so if you've got another suggestion as far as what we want to do, Michelle, bring it. But right now, I'm just getting like these fragments of inconclusive data, and it's really difficult to make a decision. And then when you add the fact that we're referring to them by a dollar amount and not the entity that's giving them, and it's just not presented in a way that I think is clear enough for us to decide on. And at the end of the day, I want to trust the data. It's not that I don't have any trust for Michelle or any distrust for Joe or Amy. You brought us to the dance. This is our business model, and I think it's done quite well. But the data needs to be presented in a clearer way, and we need to know, you know, what is going on now, and then, as Joe says, it's a rolling cycle.
So would it be helpful to provide, Joe and I work on one table per project that has grant management, grant writing, engineering costs, all of those things per project, and assign them to a fiscal year, ballpark fiscal year of when we think that we will be?
Town manager, I
Would that be helpful? I mean, I don't,
Madam Mayor.
how would you like to see it?
Well, I know the town manager and Cheryl are the ones who actually do the day-to-day work with the grants, so they would
Okay.
probably be the best people to consult as to how
And the negotiation with the consultants happens through staff,
Okay,
not at the dais.
okay. And then Commissioner Bender.
So I think I'm concurring with Commissioner Campo again. To me, we've done this in the past, right? This is an overall project. For us, we just needed to see the high-level business case, and I believe it is we've had this chart in the past. I think we talked about a spreadsheet that was from the previous town manager of the vision of what this thing is going to look like financially over the next several years to accomplish the goal of what the project is. The project's massive, right? So we've broken it into 4 phases, but still, we've got to have some sort of overall budget, and there's got to be a financial plan on how we're going to be successful and accomplish that goal. And it sounds like much of that is through offsetting those costs with grants. So because of that, it needs to be laid out pretty simply. You know, in my mind, there should be no reason why we would not sign a renewal proposal if it were presented in front of us, because it's clearly part of the financial model that makes this project successful. Right now, I don't have that yet because we've kind of, over time, gotten away from that overall financial model of the project. So we just need a financial project picture. One page, got to be super simple, right? We're not all that bright. So we just need to understand what portion of it is for the grant management piece and what portion is for the actual construction.
I will say this, I believe it is on the agenda right now because, similar to the one before, there has to be a budget amendment if we are to spend any more money on grant application management writing, because there's no room in our budget since we went past the cost. So just like the one before, that's why there's a budget amendment after it to address that issue. So we have to make give some sort of guidance tonight. Commissioner Kurzman, you've been waiting.
Yes, first, I'd like to say you folks have done a terrific job between getting grants, the way you manage the projects. I think it's amazing for the little bit of money in comparison to what this project has cost and the prior projects have cost, and what we've had to come out of pocket is minuscule. And I think pretty much if the whole thing could be brought more into layman's terms, that's, I think, pretty much what the commission's trying to ask. It's just, it's not, it takes a while to comprehend everything. Because, you got phases, you got grant management, you got grant money, it's just grant applications. It could just be a little more simplified. So, as Commissioner Campbell said before, it's something that we could explain. If I were to go and explain to somebody that has no clue exactly how this works, I could explain it in a more simplified way that they can understand.
Okay, so,
It is complicated. If you're not familiar with it, it's very complicated.
mhm.
And, it took me a while to catch on it. It's not the simplest thing to try to explain to somebody how the grants work. And I do have all the confidence in the goodness going forward as well. I believe in it. Eventually there's probably going to come a time we're going to put a little more out of pocket, but if we get these projects done that are really necessary, we're going to have to move forward. And these aren't things that really have to be delayed. Of course, we want every penny we can in grant money, but there's times we have to come out and we're out of pocket.
So the current contract that you have has CCSI managing 4 grant contracts to pay for phase 1. That's all it says. And then it has CapTech doing the water quality monitoring, education, and final report, whatever, QAP reports, for 120. That's what the current contract says. The amendment then added in grant management of sewer, and then it added in grant writing. But it has never added phases 1 through 4 descriptor in it. So does that matter? Do we have to change the language?
Would, but.
It's still all grant money. Another, and I'll go to town manager, another thing, obviously we all want a simpler and a clearer contract, and that's up for renewal. I think that I'm hearing some consensus, a clearer, more understandable contract, and also maybe separating the two vendors. I know that's confusing to have the two vendors in one contract. I don't know if that's typical, but those are the thoughts that are coming to my mind. Town manager, and then Commissioner
I think the commissioner should go before I should.
Okay, Commissioner Tombeck?
I agree with what you just said. I think that's important. I think the other thing to understand here is that when we put this together, I hope they're doing it in pencil, okay? Because this is a fluid situation in terms of which grants you go at, what the timing is and everything. And I think that's one of the things that makes this most difficult to understand is that we'd like to see something that's completely structured, dates, and that kind of thing. And I don't think you're ever going to see that here. But I think we can work out at least the next year's numbers pretty easily. And that's what we should be requesting.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Commissioner Bender.
So I agree with what you just said, but I don't think we should be doing it in pencil. I think we should be doing it in Excel so we can change the scenarios as they are modified, and we can look at different scenarios. So what I haven't seen in a very long time is that Excel model of this project and how it's impacting the budget long-term.
Right, and we have the budget long-term, but then we have this immediate issue where we have money, their expenses.
And we should be able to look on the spreadsheet of what the impact of that is.
Yep,
And that's why it should be, a no-brainer that we would either renew a contract or decide, well, okay, this isn't going to work. We have to change our strategy here.
Right. I wanted to ask the attorney, Glenn, would we have to go out for RFP if we were to separate the vendors? I find that confused. I don't know, for certain, is that, the renewal of this contract seems what about going out for RFP and just starting fresh?
Right now, your contract is with both of them together.
Right.
Went out for a competitive process. Sure. How the competitive process happened?
No, it hasn't.
That is unusual, but that was the RFP process, and they decided, I guess, a joint venture. I don't want to speak for Joe or Amy, but I guess they decided to joint venture and put in a proposal together. And so the RFP response was for those individuals. So if you're, and as Joe mentioned, you know, these grants always look at procurement, particularly the federal grants. Did you go through a procurement process? So if you're not going to renew and you're going to do something different, then I think we need to think long and hard about, do we go out, and we probably do come out for some kind of proposal, because you don't want to go through a whole process and then not get reimbursed because you didn't follow the feds or the state's procurement rules.
Okay, thank you. Town manager, you waited for the commissioners to speak. Did you want to say anything?
A couple things. I mean, this is a needed service. This is where we're at. You know, grant writing is a needed service with our capital improvements. Grant management, in part, is a needed service. As we move forward, we will have more complicated grants. But it's important to know that we apply for the grants before we get them. There's a cost for applying for grants. We don't get that money back. That money comes out of our general fund. And when we are asking information about what work will be done within the next year, it's not about what construction is going to be done. It's about what work, paperwork are you intending to do, which will then create an invoice. That's what happens. So what we would like to do is be able to go out to RFP and handle it the proper way, to Commissioner Tompeck's point of view. I think the original RFP was broad, and probably on purpose, because they weren't sure exactly what they would need, because it was the beginning of this process. And at this point, if we're moving forward and we're going to assign certain grants to follow through on, then each one would have a PO number for us to follow, and each one would have a not to exceed, in the same way that our CEI services or our construction services have to say to us, this is all we're going to spend. And if there's an opportunity to consolidate projects, I would welcome that. Because at the end of the day, this is just a bill that has to be paid first. So before we get any grants, we have to pay this bill first. And so the question is not, do you want grant services? Because we do. The question is, how much of it are we going to be able to reason out, explain for taking funding from reserves, because that's what we'll have to do, and what is your tolerance level on it? Now, some agencies, like the HMGP, puts a hard cap of 5% payout for policy on grant management. Some other agencies decide there's a certain amount of hours that are dedicated to each quarterly report. All those parameters and metrics we can place in a future RFP. Right now, we don't have that. What Joe was saying about other services being paid for within this 190, maybe that was not originally intended for, very true. But the original RFP did say other services that could get picked up on, like grant writing. What happened when we came in as your new administrators was we found bills, invoices being paid for services that we didn't have a contract for. It's not right and it's not legal. So we worked with our legal department to true it up. That's my word of the night, right? Because it's a housekeeping issue in many cases, and that's the best way to approach it when we're already in the mud. That's where we were. So we pulled out of that, and so because there were invoices for North Sewalls Point septic to sewer or other grant management issues, that came off of the top of the 190 that was out there. Now, one of the questions was to Glenn, was this typical? Is this normal? And probably a good follow-up question is, how'd you come up with 190,000? Well, we didn't work here, so we don't know, but we would guess based on what your industry leaders in agencies and National League of Cities and financial agencies tell you is that there's a certain amount of hours that it takes to get things done. And many grant managers spend 10 to 15 hours a week if they are doing multiple projects. So 10 to 15 hours, say 15 hours if you're doing 5 projects a week. And then at 120 hours, that would lead you to an appropriate number of $190,000 for not to exceed. That sounds reasonable. You established a not to exceed in that contract, and then the money was spent. Now, the other part of that contract is that it is not the town's responsibility if the contractors spend the money, however they spend it. If they submit it for a grant that they wrote because the commission said, write us a grant, and we didn't get the funding for it, it still was spent. The work was done, and we spent it. The appropriations is a great one example, but we have many, not many, at least a handful. So that on that particular grant, it was a great effort to go after $900,000. It's a big chunk of change. It cost us $15,000. Percentage-wise, everybody might be comfortable with that. But as you add up ones that don't pay out, then it becomes more difficult to reason out the expenses. Based on the math that we have done so far, with the amount of expenses versus the amount of items that we've actually had money put in the bank, we're running 28%. That's quite a bit of money. Most agencies want to run between 5 and 7%. And so what we are doing is coming to you and saying, we recognize there's a long-term relationship and establishment when it comes to the capital improvement projects and the grant writing projects. We're not looking to interrupt the process, but we're out of money on that particular item. And so where we can pay the bills so appropriately with our very low ad valorem tax rate, our millage rate, when you add in $120,000 per project, not consolidated, not 5 projects working on for 15 hours, but each, it very quickly drains the system. And at this point in time, we can move forward, but it will be a policy decision for you to pull the money, whatever that amount, portion of it, all of it, that's all of your option, it will come out of reserves.
Thank you, Town Manager. Since the contract is confusing and ideally we could craft a better contract, one of the options is I don't see that it would make the best sense and be in the best the best interest of the town to renew it. I see that option reject and go back to RFP. How does that affect the town in the for the end of our fiscal year to meet the expenses that we need to meet?
Most, if not all, grant management can be done in-house. The one item I'm worried about is Homewood. Joe's group, CapTech, is working on Homewood and has been solely. And so that's the one item, because it's so complicated now, that's the one item I'm concerned about. But we can use that technical assistance through our continuing services contract. Yes, Glenn? Yes. Yeah. So if you wanted to put this on pause and put it out to RFP and separate it out where you have grant writing as an RFP and you have grant management as an RFP, your same players can apply and it would be a competitive bid process. That's good governance. Good governance is saying, look, let's do the best thing for the people, recognize that we need to go out and make sure we're competitive, and be clear about what we're looking for in exchange.
Okay, and that can be, expedited or in a...
Yes, we can get that done pretty quickly. And again, from a standpoint of, show us the table, show us the document, show us the graphs that you want to see. I have it up here. And Cheryl and I are happy to walk through each one with you and show you the implications, because as we keep saying, many of these cash flow issues are current this year.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Town Manager. Commissioner Campo.
Yeah, is this chart that you just had in our packet?
No, sir.
Okay.
When a contract is supposed to be renewed, I would typically reach out to the vendor, the merchant, the contractor, and say, hey, your contract's being renewed. Why don't we work on you sending us a new contract? We just didn't get that done. In a series of back and forth, the best that I could offer you was that Word document for the proposal.
Right.
And then I had a conference call with our legal team to say, what are other best steps? Because we've been working diligently, every part of your staff, to try to bring you the right answers. And it really seemed as though we needed to allow you to vet this out in a conversation with the people that have been providing you the information before we receive direction on how to move forward.
Right, well, again, I go back to what I said earlier. I think that, and when I was saying it with Amy and Joe were up there, but I was really saying that staff should present that information to us as far as the breakdowns of those things. So that's what I'm looking for, is the breakdowns, like I said, the anatomy of a grant, breaking down the application process, grant writing, management, monitoring, prep, and then, like Commissioner Fender said, let's refer to these as the dollar amount that we might be collecting. We're planting seeds,
Tina.
and we're hoping that we're going to be getting some crop in the future. So you're always going to be plowing more into the ground. So that's what I'd like to see, and I'd like to see that dovetail with what Kim Delaney is putting together.
Okay.
Because, you know, if we don't get the grant situation under control, you double parked, Frank? Yeah, I did. Did you pay your parking bill? Anyway, I don't know that we're necessarily at the point of answering these 7 choices because of the amount of information that I am lacking. That's kind of where I'm at. So I'm thinking that we have to push this to the next meeting.
Now, I understand you wanting more information. I can hear that. The only thing is, I believe that, just like the other one, there's no money in the budget. So if they want to take it, you'd have to approve taking it from
Well, it says
reserve.
the contractors have collectively billed for 205. Have we paid out the 205?
We have paid out the 205, and actually I have more invoices that came in on Friday, so that number has gone up as well. Now, the contract allows us, which I don't recommend, to claw back the difference between the 190 and anything billed over the top, because the due diligence belongs to the contractor to follow that, what they submit on their invoices. And from a grant management standpoint, to your point, Commissioner Tom Peck, that we should be doing a better job of managing it, you have hired grant managers to manage the deliverables of the grants. And that is a true statement. And so we need to make sure we're following through on those items.
What about a combination of not renewing the contract and putting it out for RFP and also getting the data, the readable, easy-to-use thing, so when they come back, hopefully, then we will have a much clearer picture of exactly how it all will work in the future.
Can I jump in here? So if staff has exceeded what was allotted, then, and you've already done that, then why should we feel pressured if you've already done that? Obviously, if you've already done that, you're comfortable in doing that. So why is it now all of a sudden an urgent matter that we need to correct that tonight when we were all saying basically we need to see a better overview of what's happening?
Cheryl, you could.
Sure. When the item was originally placed on the agenda, we were at the 190 mark. We did then receive some bills for the state appropriations, which exceeded about $14,000 from each contractor. So at that point, that was really the overage. And so as we're proceeding with business and going about general business, I don't feel comfortable in not paying a vendor for work that they've done, but at the time that the item was placed on the agenda, we were at that 190 mark.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners with some guidance to staff as to how to proceed? Obviously, I believe we are not going to be approving the other resolution. Can we take that off since that one was for $691,000 from reserves? But we need to give the staff guidance on how to proceed, because
I think we have.
Well, well, then we have to make a budget, I believe we would have to make a budget amendment because we'd be paying for something that we don't have a contract for, an outside service that we don't have a contract for.
You're talking about $15,000?
No, the money from here on out to the end of the fiscal year that we will spend, we have to
Okay.
have is
Well-
that correct, Cheryl? Is
Yes,
that
the
what-
contract
I'll offer
is
guidance.
expired for two reasons the contract's expired. One is because it was a 2-year expiration date on the original RFP. The second reason is because there was a not to expend for $190,000, and now we're over it. So we have two reasons. So we can simply put it on pause as we move forward with the discussion, but staff is not in a position to just automatically renew that for you when it changed. If the contract itself was going to be the same at $190,000, my question to Glenn would have been, can we just renew it because it gives us an automatic renewal? And I think the answer would have been yes. However, once that number changed, we discussed it at length, it had to come back to you for discussion, and we even pondered whether it was the same RFP any longer, because dollar amounts changed, scope of service changed, and we really believe, from a procurement standpoint, we might be challenged for it. And so rather than give you a clear definition of where to go with this, because my clear definition is my path is very clear, and that is go back out to RFP and go back out for the two separate things. We recognize that you feel as though, many of you feel as though you've been successful. And so I wrote a memo that was clear on what the success rate looks like. And we have information we can go through. The information that you have to go through with your finance director, who I know you trust, and I know you trust your town manager, and I know you trust your building official, and your team is here working hard for you. It is our job to be good stewards of the money to make sure that you are able to make good decisions. I'm here to let you know, as your town manager, that I'm in a position from a standpoint of having to consider the future of having a contract that needs modification. I don't believe that we can rightfully pay $120,000 for grant management per grant, and that's times 5 or 6, with options to move up over the course of time, whether that's 2 years or 5 years. But what I asked for, and again, I will give you the series of email threads, was what we needed for the next year, because I don't want to bang my head against a wall and bring you information that's not clear and concise. But I'm bringing you the information I have.
Okay, thank you, Town Manager. Town Attorney, given the situation and the status of the contract, is it in our best legal interest to make a decision regarding the contract tonight?
Well, the one concern I've got is that we've technically exceeded the contract amount already. I mean, there's $190,000 cap, and what we're just hearing is that we've already received invoices for more than that and paid more than that. So to keep our records clear on grant reimbursements, I'm thinking that maybe you amend this contract for a short term, whether it's a few months and increase it a little bit to cover any invoices that are in, and your collective decision as to whether that will be the new cap, and so any work they do after this, they're not going to get paid for because you get a cap. And in the meanwhile, then you can consider next month, I think Vice Mayor Campo talked about Treasure Coast is going to do a presentation. I've heard conversations about an RFP. You could direct staff to begin developing that RFP, and then based on your Treasure Coast recommendation, maybe modify that. But buy yourself a few months to at least document that you're expending money appropriately, because otherwise they're working for free, and I don't think based on the collective relationship you want to do that. But I also don't think you want to spend money beyond what's been contracted. So whether it's a amendment for 2 or 3 months, or maybe till September 30th, because if you're going to do an RFP process, let's face it, that's going to take 3 or 4 months. So, and if you're going to wait till next month to make that decision, then realistically, you're probably at May, June, July for an RFP process. You make your decision probably at your August meeting, so it might dovetail nicely with the end of the fiscal year. Now, we haven't talked about that scenario, but as I'm listening to this, that seems like a reasonable path forward and the only thing that I think is really hard is what is that number? If it's going to be a 6-month extension, and I'm not going to really put Joe maybe on the spot, but what's an estimate for what that would be for that 6 months? Is it 50,000, 60,000, and then increase the cap to that amount? Just one suggestion.
I appreciate that. I think that sounds like a very logical suggestion to, solve these issues we're having. Commissioner Fender?
So I just sense in this conversation, we're making this harder than it has to be, right? I mean, I feel like we're possibly overlooking the value of the reasons why we entered in the contract in the first place, and some of those were soft relationship type reasons, and we're also taking away the project scope of it. I mean, we can easily extend the contract, but it has to make sense from a not a budget, not a fiscal budgetary perspective, but for a reason why we are embarking on this project to begin with. We should look at it from the terms of the project itself. Are we going to go forward with, we're already halfway down the project, but if that project has changed because we've extended the life of that contract, then we've got to stop and erase your pencil marking or change my Excel spreadsheet to say, this is what the decision we have to make now, and here's the impact it's going to have. In this conversation, we haven't talked about the relationship value of the relationship we have, and we haven't talked about what the long-term impact of the change to the project scope will be, and how that will impact our budget long-term. So I don't think we can make a decision on that other than come back and say, if we stop work right now, we don't pay another invoice, this is where the project's going to stand, and that's decision one. Decision two is we are going to invest some money out of reserves if that's the case, and it's going to allow the project to be be completed this way at this cost. Or we have to step back and say, okay, what's the ROI on this particular project? Maybe we have to change the scope of the project. It has nothing to do with the individual contractor going out for RFP. We can do that on a handshake, I think, as long as we're accomplishing the goal that we want to accomplish as a town, and it's returning the proper investment on that, a proper return on that investment that we're making. Because in this case, these are invested dollars. We're investing $7,500 or $12,000 per grant, and we expect to get something in return for that. So, and we have to stop each time and say, is that a good investment? Should I buy my option in GameStop, or should I invest in Amy to bring us some more money to finish this project? So, or should we invest in someone else? But my guess is there's a reason why we're investing in Amy today, and we should consider that relationship value. And in context with the overall project itself, which we can't see right now.
Thank you, Commissioner. I actually think and hope, I don't think that the suggestion Glenn said, which I thought sounded very reasonable, would sacrifice those relationships. It would just put us in better alignment and accomplishing things the correct way. And they can certainly submit their bids and...
Well, wouldn't you say the correct way is to picture what the end goal is, right?
No, I'm talking about like actually making sure the contract matches what is being paid for our grant so that we can get the grants. Is that my understanding, that they pay attention to that?
I don't disagree with that, but why does it matter if you have your eye on the goal? You want to accomplish the goal. Who cares how the sausage is made or the dots, how the I's are dotted?
And so we agree that those relationships are good. I just think this is a way to make sure that all those needs are met. Commissioner Tom Peck.
Yeah, I think we're getting down to the bottom of the funnel here, and since we're potentially looking at an RFP, we understand how long that process takes. We certainly don't want to stop us dead in the water here. So I think Joe and Amy gave us some information. We probably need to finalize a little bit more the cost to get us to October the 1st, amend the contract for that, and then we can, and that's what I suggest we do.
Okay.
I can make that a motion if you'd like.
I think that sounds like a great motion to make.
So moved.
All right.
I don't even understand the motion, honestly.
Well, I'll get a second, then we could, or I hope to get a second, and then we could discuss it.
Well, I'd like to second it if I understood it. That's my point.
Okay.
Well, we're talking about, we obviously have a contract problem here in terms of
No, I get it. What's the motion?
the motion would be to request additional information for the specific cost associated with the balance of this fiscal year and put that in an amendment to the contract. We can certainly pursue the the RFP, but we know how long it's going to take.
I don't, I like, so what I heard there mostly is get more information. But the question, how would that information come to us?
Well, I think, Joe and Amy have talked about that already tonight, what they anticipate the cost being for the balance of this fiscal year. We probably want to get that in a little more of a formal. And then, of course, I think we do have to cover the excess over the $190,000 because, that should be covered as well. And that gives us the opportunity to keep the project, the projects moving.
I will second it if there's a friendly amendment to say that in context with the overall project. I don't want just their numbers, because I have their numbers. I want to know what the numbers mean, and it has to be in terms of what is that in relation to what we're trying to accomplish.
Okay, and we can just say, including the numbers and the detailed description of services.
Why don't we also get more information that our staff are looking to give us alternatives in addition to that as well?
What do you mean? What do you
Yeah,
mean by what
that's
alternatives?
In other words, we're talking RFP, what it would cost
Yes.
to go another direction besides just one direction. So it might be, we have option 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's look at the different options all around, what makes
Yeah.
the most sense financially.
I like the idea of to Commissioner Tompeck's point, renewing or revising the contract to get us through to the end of the fiscal year so that we don't stop the project. We have the momentum. This is how we do it. Big picture put in there so that we're educated on the big picture, and then exploring the options, starting the new fiscal year with potentially an RFP or whatever other options, because I think the contract is not ideal in terms of how it is set up. So somehow to refresh it for the town.
As
So,
long as it's tied into the big picture, I'm on board.
okay.
I think we're all saying the same thing.
So Commissioner Tompeck, could you remake a motion, please?
You want me to say that all
Something
over
like that.
again? Sure.
Madam Mayor.
I'll take a shot at it, because what I think I'm hearing is, one, giving staff and myself directions to amend this contract, bring it back to you next meeting so you can see exactly all the fuzzy stuff we're talking about. So amend the contract till September 30th and come back with a dollar price and a scope of services. To me, that's kind of motion one. And then motion two would be direct staff to begin the RFP process with a goal towards having a selection before September 30th.
Okay.
See, that's
Okay.
not my motion.
Commissioner
That's not-
Tompeck, yes, is that,
Yeah, I agree with that, and with the added thing to reconcile the overage over the $190,000 as
Okay.
part of that amendment.
okay.
Again, I'm still.
Can I get a
not-
second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. All right. I think it's been discussed, so let's call the vote, please.
I will say that
Okay, I
I
felt like
want
you
to
were
vote for
discussing.
this, but I can't because we're not tying
Okay,
it
hold
into
up,
the
hold
overall
up, hold up. It's
project.
getting very late,
Yeah.
okay, and we need to move forward, okay? If you have something that's a little bit different, I'll welcome it, but I feel like we're saying the same thing over and over. There's a motion on the floor. Is there something that is different than what you've said that you would like to add?
Tied into the overall project scope.
Okay,
The overall, when I say, maybe and you're misinterpreting what I'm saying. The overall project is the end goal of the 4 phases of the project, right?
yes, and that will always be a part of this whole big picture. So Commissioner Campo, do you have anything to say? I'm going to call the vote in a second. Yes,
I'd like to have that, since it is two parts, broken down in two motions.
I think it is.
okay, we can do that.
Okay, so
So
What's motion one?
Commissioner Tompeck,
your first motion is to amend the contract till September 30th?
Right, yeah.
And increase the price and bring it back so that you can all see it.
okay,
Okay.
got
So-
it, got it.
So I'll move that, or,
No, Commissioner Tompeck moved
Okay.
it, so we need a second.
okay? Okay.
Okay, let's call the vote, please, Town Clerk.
Mayor Mayfield,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Campo,
Yes.
Commissioner Fender,
Yes.
Commissioner Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Tompeck.
Yes. I was going to say
Okay.
no just for fun.
And then the second motion, please.
Okay, the second motion is to, I'm not sure, we want to develop the
Direct staff,
RFP
yes.
and try to get that out on the streets in the next 6 weeks, something like that?
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely. Okay.
I'll second that as well.
All right,
Discussion.
discussion.
I'm against that because I think we have an option that we're obligated to discuss before we start going out for RFPs. So, I mean, we can move ahead. I know it's
Okay.
getting...
Yeah,
What is
we-
that option?
Well, no, we're going to move ahead because this will come up to discussion before we actually go through with an RFP, correct? All right, so I'm going to call the vote.
Commissioner Tom Peck,
Yes.
Commissioner Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Fender,
No.
Vice Mayor Campo,
No,
Mayor Mayfield.
Yes. All right.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
in front of you, not only is your finance director, but on the screen is the information I believe that you want to see, and we have had this for each presentation that these grant managers have offered you. So again, I would like to request individual meetings where possible so that we can walk through it line item by line item, so you can see the impact of each one of these grants and the cash flow implications attached to each as well. And so we can do that privately with you individually, and then be ready, based on feedback, to make that part of the presentation when we come back to follow up on the directive we just received from you. So thank you very much, and it was a long discussion, but the directives needed to happen, so we appreciate it.
Thank you, I appreciate
do you
that.
think when you send that out, Town Manager, that you can,
Commissioner Cambo.
do you think when you send that out, you can define Phase 1, Part 2 with geographic?
Yes, I agree with you so wholeheartedly. I've been asking our engineer and others to, I'm looking at Glenn because we've been asking this multiple times, to come before the commission with actual name changes. And the reason I say come before the commission is because each one of these projects, names are attached to grants. And so in order for them to be changed in a way that we can understand it, we must vote on the name change so that they will be clearly defined when FEMA looks at it and starts to award it. So I agree with you, it needs to be a sense of urgency for us to rename it, and then that can also be part of our PO process, which is what we want to do with the new RFP.
Okay, thank you.
But thank you, I think it's a great suggestion.
Justin, I agree. Cheryl, I know you were standing there. Did you want to add anything? Well, because this is it. I think, oh, there's one. Did you want to add anything? Are you good?
Work?
I'm good.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you, Cheryl. And now we are moving on to,
This should have been the first thing. This is the good news.
no discussion. Let's move to staff comments.
So, Madam Mayor,
Yes.
Commission,
That's it. It's under the staff comment.
I offer you a flyer. It's the information from the American Rescue Plan Act. And so far, this is the number we've received twice now, so it's starting to look as though it's confirmed. The town of Sewalls Point may receive $935,415 allocated from the American Rescue Plan. Now, the fine details and the strings attached have not been sent yet, so we're still waiting for that information. But we do hear that it will be administered in 2 disbursements, one this fiscal year, the second next fiscal year. We are hopeful that when we receive it, we'll be able to utilize it towards our public safety salary and usages for the police department, and then maybe the second year for our fire district contract
Excellent. That sounds like good news.
or others. As soon as we
Okay.
know more, you'll know more.
Okay, thank you. Any other staff comments? I'm sorry, town manager, you usually ask that.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh,
yes,
yay.
please join. So you want to join? So I reached out to each of you to discuss the option of celebrating the Easter egg hunt in the way that you have in the many years past. And we believe that we can execute it modified, but in a way that's beneficial for the kids. So we're eliminating some of the adult contests, or all the adult contests, but we will do the egg hunt itself starting at 9 a.m. on Good Friday.
Next
which
Friday.
is Yes, which is April 2nd.
April
Yep.
2nd.
April 2nd. And it'll start at 9 a.m. sharp. So for our kids that want to participate in the egg hunt, it will be at the park. And what am I leaving out, Tina?
Yeah, we have eliminated the Easter bonnet and fancy fedora contest just because it's too hard to keep that separation, although they're still more than welcome to make them and wear them. We're going to prepackage the Jupiter donuts, so make sure you come out for your donuts. We're just going to go ahead and individually bag them ahead of time, and our volunteers will help to distribute them that way. And we're probably going to redesign how we lay out some of the park, just to encourage social distancing, but we hope that all of our dignitaries will be there for the egg hunt.
We're requesting a mask mandate, and we'll have some for the children that will be appropriate size so that they can participate. But we think it'll be a fun event, and we appreciate your feedback of saying, yeah, let's try it, let's go with
We
it.
figure kids are wearing masks at school now, so, hopefully we can make it as safe as we can.
I think that's wonderful news. I know that is a lovely event, so I am glad you guys are putting it together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner comments?
I think that Mr. Attorney, do you have an update?
No, I think I've said enough here. You all know the legislature's in session, so, they're attacking home rule as they have for the last few years, so just be mindful of that. You may be getting those alerts from the League of Cities and, contact folks that you know to let the town's position known.
Thank you. Any Commissioner Tompeck?
Just one very quick thing, and it's an add-on to the town manager was talking about. The information we've received so far on the American Rescue Plan in terms of allowable use of funds includes not only what she had previously mentioned, but it also includes investments in water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure.
Broadband infrastructure.
So I think there may be some opportunities to help ourselves on that.
Excellent. Thank you. Commissioner Campo?
Several things. I want to thank staff for the job that they've done. I know it's a lot of data. We all have full-time jobs. We have a lot of obligations. So I appreciate your patience in breaking down as much of that data for us in an understandable format. I always trust the folks, including Michelle and Cheryl and Jack and April. I like a lot of information before I'm making a big decision. So I in no way doubt the information that you're given, but I'd like to know before I set out on a venture what the numbers are going to look like completely. A couple other things. I think it would be good, and Chief could probably agree, to call it a spring egg hunt because we've gotten in trouble by calling it Easter egg hunt. And then I'd like to ask the town manager if she could update us on the recent tree fines and the development north of India Lucy where there's been some clearing. All of those have created some questions out in the community, and especially when people come over Evans Curry Bridge and see that vacant lot. So any status that's,
No?
Yes.
And again, I will partner with my town attorney. I've gotten a lot of questions about all law things tonight, but I'm happy to start it. The North Sewalls Point project that you're referring to was the Banyan Hill Estates project, which has now turned to ownership. From what we have been told, it has now moved from being the larger 6 to 7 plat development to what sounds like one home. And he's creating a landscape that will be beneficial to one home. And so at this point in time, the items that he is removing with his contractors are non-natives, invasives, and scrub issues that are allowed. And he's been working with his landscape architect, and the building official has walked the property multiple times with him to make sure. And so I sent out an email to the town because we knew that anytime you have trucks pull up, it does create, some concern. But we want the calls coming in, by the way, because we need that first alert. The other one that you asked me about was the special magistrate, the cleared lots. So on one of the cleared lots, which was in the High Point area, that was a $48,000, I believe, fine. And then the other one was a $58,000 fine for the clearing. And the special magistrate made those final determinations. The documentation is in the process. It has to go through a special legal process. And so I would turn to Glenn now to explain where it's at in the process.
Well, Michelle said we had those both hearings, and it's always difficult to have a hearing against a resident. But yet the resident violated the code of the town. We believe that, and the magistrate accepted that. And so there were, two very extensive violations of tree ordinances, many trees chopped down. This is a poor analogy, but for those of you that remember the Three Stooges and remember Mo, Larry, and Curly, and it looked like Larry, with the one with the bushy hair, had gotten the haircut right down the middle with a razor on one of the pictures, right, the one property.
Yeah.
That was the analogy that kept hitting my mind, like, oh my God.
We refer them to Dave's office for that, right?
That's right. I should have given him your number.
He's one of your best clients, isn't he?
So the magistrate entered those orders, and one, it was a straight dollar amount. I think there was the 47,000 or so, and then the other one, it was 37.5, I believe, with 15,000 additional dollars, but that was set on hold if the person took certain steps, mitigating it, filling the shoreline, applying for a permit, none of which has occurred. So that's where you get the $50,000 number. So both of those, as I say, after 30 days, and they do have 30 days to file an appeal, so it's not final until then. And if they don't, then the town can file a lien.
Have we received any notices of appeal, and when is the 30-day notice, or when is the 30-day deadline?
It's 30 days after that hearing. I got to think back what day the hearing was.
The 20th, right?
Is that one of those famous Torsivia pocket calendars?
Yes, I've got some here if you need.
Boy, I was wondering where those
Came in
things
late this year. They
Yeah.
were like the famous Torsivia calendar. So actually, I don't remember what day that hearing was. I think it was
March 3rd.
March 3rd. So, okay, so roughly April 3rd would be the time for notice of appeal. One of the two gentlemen I know consulted with an attorney because I spoke with that attorney, but as of today, that person has not taken the case. So it's generally tough to successfully appeal a code case, but, you know, people do it all the time. The law books are full of lawsuits, so let's hope they don't appeal, and hopefully they pay without having to file a lien on their property.
Okay.
I got to say, the staff did a great job. I mean, the pictures, Michelle had annotated pictures, you know, with arrows and everything showing these trees, and it was really great. Jack did a great job.
I was clicking the button.
And she was, yes. April, everybody, it was a whole team effort. I mean, the
Yeah.
whole team was here, and everybody participated, and it went very smoothly.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. That is one of the issues that most people get behind are the trees, and they let us know. So thank you for taking care of that, all of you. All right, seeing no other comments, I am going to adjourn this meeting.